Now at this point, everyone and their mothers knows about chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune, and when it was first announced, the only thing I could think of was, man, I really have to finish this 3-hour video essay fast. But after that, I was super hyped. Now, I've been a Toby Foxhead since 2015, but that small anxiety part of my brain was worried. It's been 4 years since chapter 2. What if the wait wasn't worth it? What if it wasn't good? Well, ladies and gentlemen, after playing both chapters, beating the secret bosses, and getting both eggs, I have to say, and it's good! Yeah, these chapters are both incredible. I loved the new characters, I loved all 3 members of the Fun Gang's character development, and I really loved the rules card polycule. God, it was all just so incredible. I especially loved Kris's interactions with us, the Soul. Yeah, I know I deserve a hockey stick to the heart for picking all the dialogue options where you flirt with Berdly, Kris, and I know I made you ask him to the festival, but you'll learn to love him. I'll make sure of that. Yeah, even after 4 years of Deltarune tomorrow, Toby Fox has still got it. But I am disappointed that he didn't personally ask me, internet content creator and universally beloved icon Kustopia, what I thought of the game. Despite this crippling blow to my ego, I loved the game a lot, and there's a lot I really wanted to talk about. But after playing through the game, there's one specific part that made me think, yup, that's the first thing I'm gonna make a video on. Now, I ran a poll a few days back asking you guys if you like Chapter 3 or Chapter 4's secret boss better, and to my surprise, everyone and their mother picked Chapter 4. This actually came as a shock to me, because yeah, I do agree with the vast majority that 4 was better than 3 in terms of plot and story significance, but in my opinion, the secret boss of Chapter 3 is the best out of every single chapter so far. The build-up, the implications, the subversion of expectations in the actual fight itself were done perfectly, and the fact that I did all the secrets in my first ever run made it even better. Now, some of you may be confused, so how about we just hop right into it. Today, ladies and gentlemen, let me go over why Chapter 3's secret boss is a genuine masterpiece. Now, within Chapter 3, a majority of Tenna's TV time is spent in this NES-like world that takes clear inspiration from the original Legend of Zelda game. It's really funny, and I love all the character interactions. But what I really want to talk about is after getting S rank in the first round, you're able to go into the S rank room. A room you'd expect to be super fancy and amazing since with the other rooms, you know the higher the rank you get, the better they are. But once you cross through that guarded S rank door, you're greeted with a filthy, worn down changing room, where only the lowest of the low reside. Now, from an outside perspective, this could just be a joke at the player's expense, rewarding the effort of getting an S rank with nothing but a crummy room. But obviously, it's a Toby Fox game, so there's always gonna be more than that. Except for the times when there isn't. You then talk to this plug boy named Ram, a character who honestly took me so off guard when I first met him. There were just so many signs pointing to him being the secret boss, and yet he's hardly mentioned. He's known Kris for a very long time, with him being part of the cyber world before Kris and Azrael took him home. He's an outcast from the rest of the other Darkners, he's aware of Kris's desire for freedom, and he keeps referencing Jevil and Spamton's iconic catchphrases. Yeah, that last one seems a little bit too obvious. Honestly, Ram deserves a full video on his own, but that's for another day. Ram tells Kris about how the game Tenna's having them play isn't the original, and that he tweaked it, saying how the original game Backstage gives Kris true freedom where they can make their own decisions. A game where your choices matter, the exact opposite of what Deltarune's trying to tell you? Where have I heard that one before? Anyways, after speaking with Ram, you head backstage and begin the game, with Kris picking up a controller with yellow and pink buttons to play it with. I'll get into that little detail later. But as Kris boots up the game, they, and we, are greeted with the same map that Tenna created for round 1. As you walk around, you notice some very interesting things. For one, the map is covered with a ton of retro-looking monsters, who, when approached, don't do anything. They simply walk around, and when you run into them, they don't try to hurt you. There's also distinctly no music when you look around, only the sounds of ocean waves. And when you enter the shop, the entire room is just empty. As you continue exploring, you come across a strange trapdoor, and when you enter it, you find a sword. And once you take it, it makes this strange noise. Sound familiar? Not only does it play a sound similar to the Weird Roots jingle, but when finding that room in round 1, Tenna refers to it as the mail room, which is a direct reference to Spamton, as not only are Spamton and Tenna canonically bitter exes, but Tenna also refers to him as the little mailman. So the sword is found in the mail room, and a sound that resembles the Weird Roots jingle plays. You know who's the direct cause of the Weird Root in the first place? That little mailman. Once that sword's in your inventory, you're sent back to the surface, but now you have a level meter. After seeing this, my first thought immediately went to Undertale. I did not want to kill any of these monsters and searched around the map, trying to find a way to progress without killing. But then I came across the shop again, with white text appearing in the room before me. Become stronger. After hearing that, you have no choice but to start killing the monsters, with them not fighting back until you've reached level 2. So much for freedom, I guess. But as you begin slaying these monsters, triumphant music begins to swell in the background. It's like the game itself is encouraging you to kill them. Even more, these aren't the quirky characters that you fight against in Deltarune and Undertale. These are just classic video game monsters that you slay to boost your strength, devoid of any kind of personality or quirks. As you continue exploring and getting stronger, you learn that with your newfound power, you can begin destroying the environment around you, leading you to find even more monsters and continue gaining power. The triumphant music's still present as you continue battling. But as you explore, you come across a blue bird monster that flies around several trees, objects that you can't break until you reach the max level. And once that max level is hit and every monster is defeated, the music just stops. You can then go back to that blue bird monster. You can destroy the trees it flies into, and after many strikes with your sword, you can eventually kill it. But the question is, why would you even need to? You're already max level, and with the amount of strikes needed to actually kill it, it's something you need to go extremely out of your way to do. Which is why I believe that this blue bird is actually supposed to represent Berdly. Not only because the monster itself is a blue bird, but because the continuous effort it takes to kill it mirrors the effort you need to kill Berdly. You have to repeatedly force Noelle, despite her protests, to use Snowgrave on Berdly, and when she finally does it, nothing of value is gained from the encounter. Once you slay every single monster, the music stops and you can go back to the shop. The words in the room changing to became stronger, which is what appears when you defeat Darkeners violently. While you explore this empty room, if you walk around it enough, you'll eventually stumble upon black letters that can only be visible if Kris walks through them. They read out, "Are you having fun?" And when I first stumbled upon it, I knew that the secrets of this chapter were gonna be crazy. The text itself could represent Tenna's desire to make the games fun for Kris. It could also represent that feeling of emptiness that's present in Undertale after you kill all the monsters in an area. You're all alone now, and the game itself is asking you if you're having fun with it. But I personally think the text is asking if Kris is enjoying the game, not us. Asking Kris if they're having fun with the freedom that this game's supposed to bring. As you continue to explore, you come across several mysterious areas, with one in a pyramid that flashes those pink and yellow eyes and a massive smile for a second before disappearing, and another room with black text that reads "See you soon" with a mysterious creature flying away. More on those two things later. And after gaining all that power, you are, in a way, given freedom. Everything in the world can be destroyed. And as you cut through those previously unbreakable trees, you stumble across a chest, and when you open it, you obtain a special item, the Ice Key. And as you grab it, a slow, eerie chiptune jingle plays in the background. I can't make out what it is, but I believe it's the flashback leitmotif. The one that plays when you visit Noelle in the hospital during the weird route in chapter 2. This entire segment was so subtly amazing, with all the symbolism and hints that alluded to Snowgrave, Undertale itself, and a bunch of other interesting aspects that come into play later. I think the most interesting aspect about it all is the fact that the game doesn't give you a choice on how to handle these monsters. The game's supposed to offer you freedom, but you're forced to kill them. It makes you question what this freedom really is and what the cost of it will be. But this is just one piece to a whole, so let's keep going. The next section of the original game comes, of course, right after you get an S rank in round 2. After doing some more monster slaying and raft riding, you can stumble across this small area in the shape of a heart, and when you enter it, you see Tenna, talking to himself while you're out of frame. He questions why he decided to base the game he's having Kris, Ralse, and Susie play off of this old one, with him worried about strange things that are starting to shine through. He then wishes for Kris to tell him that he's doing something right, and to smile and laugh. After that, you can also enter a strange cave with a dark blue room, instructing you to go to Northern Light, and in the background, a strange, eerie sounding theme plays. More on that later. As you travel north, the sandy yellow desert is replaced with white snow, and as you walk around, you find a large door with the symbol of the Deltarune on the front. After using the ice key, you're sent to a dungeon with a blue-gray color scheme throughout. The song heard throughout the dungeon, titled Glacier, is unsettling and creepy. It gives off the feeling that you aren't supposed to be here. After killing a few more monsters, you then come across yet another blue bird. But unlike before where the bird was out of the way and unnecessary to kill, this one blocks your path, with all attacks bouncing off it as it refuses you entry into this other room. After going around the dungeon, you come across two strange areas, each with their own text. The forbidden path began with ice magic. Follow the white cloak. You then come across this strange figure, covered in a white cloak, and after finding them, you're able to defeat those previously invincible enemies, freezing them solid with this mage's ice magic. And each time you command them to attack, they seem to be taking damage, similar to the effects of the Thorn Ring. After freezing that blue bird, you and the mage come across this strange maze, a puzzle that holds a lot more significance than what's on the surface. During the Spamton sweepstakes, there was a series of blog posts that were written by Noelle, with one post in particular being titled Ice Palace _Glacier, the name of the song that was playing in the background. Noelle talks about how in one of the games she played as a kid, she was stuck on this maze puzzle because she never got the character that guides you through it. But after trying every single route repeatedly, she eventually came across a secret door that she couldn't open without a key. But despite never finding the key, she ended up getting consistently good at navigating the maze. In order to solve this puzzle, you need to try every direction, and if the mage stops following you down a path, you know that direction's wrong. After letting the white mage be your guide, you make it to this strange door, the music in the background cutting out completely. The door itself has a red outline with red horns on the frame, with said red horns being an accessory that Kris used to wear. As you touch the door, the ice key vanishes from your inventory, with text saying that it was used up. Then the text states that she was used up, with the white mage disappearing behind Kris, and as you walk through the door, the entire area is shrouded in darkness. As you go further into the room, a voice tells Kris that they found its secret hiding spot, and as you go deeper, you come across something akin to a save point, and when you interact with it, you obtain the shelter key, with the voice thanking Kris specifically for all their hard work. And then, text slowly appeared on the screen. You were used up. As the game cuts to black, with Kris turning their head, either to see if anyone was coming into the room, or in my opinion, looking at us, the player. This section was honestly incredible, and it was at this point that I knew I wanted to make a video on this segment of the game. Almost the entirety of the level was referencing Snowgrave, with the white mage representing Noelle, the text about the forbidden path, and the way the mage kept hurting themselves in order to use a spell were all things that happened in chapter 2. Adding on to this, when you enter the cave that instructs you to go to Northern Light, the music that plays overhead uses the flashback leitmotif. But what does it all mean? Does this segment serve as nothing more than a tutorial on how to start the weird route? Well, of course not. The ice maze is an integral part as to why it goes deeper. Not only does Noelle's blog show how the entirety of the game Kris is playing was based off of the Dragon Blazers video game, but it's also implied that the reason why Noelle never got the guide character for the puzzle was because she herself was supposed to be the guide for another, which explains why she was never able to find the key to the door in the first place. But why is Dragon Blazers so important? Well, it's because during Gerson's fight in chapter 4, he tells Susie about the chapters in his book, which were inspired by the prophecy, telling her about the first chapter where the heroes defeat a king and stop a dragon, referencing the Spade King and stopping a dragon referring to Susie becoming Kris's friend, the second chapter that takes place in a city, and in the third chapter, Gerson titles it The Isles of Northern Light, where the heroes travel to a lost land, with Northern Light being the place Kris travels to in this part of the game. It's revealed that Dragon Blazers itself was inspired by Gerson's Lord of the Hammer novel, and although Dragon Blazers did change some things around, it was still inspired by Lord of the Hammer, which was in turn inspired by the prophecy. I believe that it symbolizes that the entirety of this game is supposed to mirror parts of the prophecy that's so prominent in chapter 4. After seeing the stuff we already know, the aspects of the game that mirror chapter 2, we see Noelle being sacrificed or used up, and then after getting the key to the bunker, Kris gets used up, showing that at some point in time, both Kris and Noelle are seemingly going to run out of use, with Kris looking back at us signifying that we might be the ones to throw them out. But I'd never throw out Kris, because who else am I gonna ship with Berdly? Overall, this section of the game is tense, creepy, and we now know that it has aspects of the previous chapter's history and even parts of it that come later. But what does it all mean? Well, we've got one last section, so let's get into it. Right before you reach the big screen, you're stopped by a semi-petrified Ram, who tells Kris that he got the game ready for them one last time. Before moving on to play, Ram questions why Kris created the Dark Fountain in the first place, bringing up how because of them, Toriel was trapped and Darkness were getting petrified. He asks Kris if they decided to do it for fun. After Ram's questioning, Kris moves on to the final level of the game. As they boot it up, this time, they're in a massive city, accompanied by Susie and Ralsei, who follow them silently. As you walk around the city, you notice that unlike the previous two levels, there are no monsters to be found, just an empty, silent city. And when you finally obtain the sword, you're teleported in front of some strange rope, which is meant to be cut at a higher level. But there's no possible way for you to get stronger. There's simply no monsters to slay. When I killed Susie and Ralsei, my jaw genuinely dropped. And when Kris turns around after killing them both, people usually interpret it as them looking away, not wanting to watch their friends being killed by their own hands. But I interpret this scene as Kris looking directly at us, knowing that it was us who killed them. It's like the game is telling us that in order to truly become stronger, in order to proceed, sacrifices needed to be made. After killing your friends, you now have enough strength to break through the ropes and continue forward, entering a manhole. In the manhole is another dungeon where you battle through many different monsters. As you continue through the dungeon, you eventually kill all the monsters within each room, but your level still isn't maximum. That's when you enter one of the last rooms in the dungeon, which is filled with dozens of monsters. They don't move and they don't fight back, and once you kill every last one of them, You finally hit max level. It seems like all of these monsters came to this room to hide. In fact, the entirety of the dungeon itself seems to have been made to hide from Kris, which explains why the city is entirely empty, with every monster taking refuge underground. What's interesting is that someone made a post online talking about how many of the monsters in this level resemble monsters in the light world, which could represent all the Lightners who are going to the dark world. And within one of these rooms is a black, shadowy creature referred to as the Black Deer, which mirrors your movements, and by the end, you have to slay it too. But what's interesting is that you eventually gain control of this Black Deer's movements, and when you get close to Kris, they attack it on their own. This might allude to Noelle, who, after the events of the Weird Root in Chapter 4, seems to be gaining a soul of their own, which means we might control her later on. As Kris finally moves forward as strong as they could be, they reach a long hallway, watching as Tenna laments to himself about locking Toriel away, blaming everything that happened on Spamton, saying that if he didn't run away after taking a phone call, he could have learned the secrets to becoming a big shot. As Kris makes their presence known, Tenna tells them that he held up his part of the deal, asking Kris not to turn him off again, with the deal the two made not being explicitly said. Because of the way Tenna begs not to be turned off again, along with a previous chat between Tenna and Susie, it's quite possible that Kris made a deal with Tenna to keep the Fun Gang busy, which is one of the first hints that Kris and the Knight are working together. No matter what, you need to kill him, and after that, you find yourself in a golden forest, the exact same one in Hometown. And when you continue down the path, you find yourself right at that old bunker. As you approach the bunker, we see Kris physically trying to push you back in the game, trying to get NES Kris to move backwards. But after pushing through Kris's resistance, you enter the bunker with the key. As you travel through the bunker, everything is shrouded in darkness, and once you reach a completely black room, that voice from the second round calls out to you, asking Kris if the reason they're searching for all these shadow crystals is simply for fun. The voice asks Kris if they honestly think that by getting these crystals in the mantle that they'll get what they want, telling Kris that a part of them was definitely enjoying all of this, with that part of Kris possibly referring to us, the soul, or with the Weird Roots dialogue suggesting that because of the soul's control, Kris could have some sick relief knowing that they don't need to be held accountable for what happened during Snowgrave. The being then reveals itself to be the Shadow Mantle, and during the battle, it uses fire magic along with summoning these strange cat-like creatures with that smiling, heterochromic face to attack you with. Now, although its eyes could have some significant meaning, the smile itself and the creature's cat-like appearance could be referencing the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, a theory that's been around for a long time, but with these monsters, it definitely adds more evidence to it. Within Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat is supposed to act as a guide of sorts to Alice, which could represent how within the game, these cats were guiding Kris to the Shadow Mantle, and potentially through the prophecy itself. Someone online also pointed out how it's the direct opposite of the annoying dog. After the mantle is defeated, it tells Kris that it finally got to see their eyes flicker red, and tells Kris that without play, the knife grows dull, granting them the Shadow Mantle. Now throughout the game, Kris's eyes have become red several times, with the reason behind it unknown, and the knife grows dull could have many different meanings. We know that Kris is most definitely working with the Roaring Knight in some way, with the comment on how the knife grows dull along with Kris being used up in the previous part of the game shows that at some point, Kris's use to some higher power is going to be exceeded, and they'll be replaced. As Kris approaches the Shadow Mantle in the game, NES Kris is too small to reach up, but as you navigate the room, a path leads out of it and into the real world itself. As Kris sees the smaller version of themselves on the floor, they drop their controller in horror, backing up as it slowly walks toward them despite the controller being dropped. It's such a shocking, captivating scene, and one that I feel is extremely compelling to look at from Kris's perspective. Kris is coming face to face with a reflection of themselves, the way they believe we view them. Small, almost puny, and completely under the soul's control. Because of the size of NES Kris, regular Kris was most definitely reminded of Spamton, seeing a version of themselves that mirrored Spamton's small appearance while being puppeted by another being. Kris already related to Spamton's plight, but seeing this in front of them must have been a whole nother level of traumatizing. As NES Kris disappears, Susie arrives and asks Kris if they're having fun playing alone. If Kris responds no, Susie tells them that if they're not having fun, just don't play it, ripping the controller out of the game and telling Kris to stop making her and Ralsei wait. After Susie's appearance, it made me remember why I love her and Kris's dynamic so much. One of Kris's first acts that defied the soul's control was protecting Susie, and throughout it all, she remained their constant anchor. The way she rips the controller out of the game signifies that maybe, with her by Kris's side, they'll be able to gain full control of themselves again. Or you know, you can use NES Kris to make a cruisy moment. Either one works. This entire segment was honestly incredible. The way you had to sacrifice your friends, and the hints toward all of this being part of the prophecy was just all so bone-chilling intense. It was amazing. And after you complete this game, if you choose to attack Tenna during his actual fight, Kris does way more damage than both Susie and Ralsei, which could be connected to their anger at what they witnessed, or it could be related to the deal the two of them made together. The only complaint I had during it was that the secret boss itself wasn't that amazing. The build-up was perfect, creating so much tension and concern towards what would happen to everyone. But the boss didn't have the same weight as Spamton or even Jevil, and Jevil was locked up for 95% of the game. I even told my friends this, but like most things I talk about, I was very, very wrong. When I faced that rotten knight for the first time, I was super hyped. This big bad was talked about so many times before by so many of the major characters, and taking it on this early had me on the edge of my seat. And like most people, I got my ass kicked. But then, with Kris, Susie, and Ralsei defeated and all hope seeming lost, nothing happened, because I forgot to put on the Shadow Mantle after I got it. I only remembered it was an actual item to wear when talking with Sham during Chapter 4. He told me that there was no way I could have won without it, and I was like, oh crap. Yeah, I'm a silly goose. But after reloading to Chapter 3 and equipping the Shadow Mantle, the real secret boss battle could begin, and oh boy was it a crazy battle. Every one of its attacks had my palms sweating and my heart pounding. Now this was a secret boss. Honestly, a lot of people didn't seem to consider the Roaring Knight a secret boss, believing that the Shadow Mantle itself was the real one. But because the Roaring Knight is the one who gets you the Shadow Crystal, and the fact you're under the assumption that you're supposed to lose that fight, I consider it a secret boss. Despite how absolutely ridiculous that fight was, once you get consistent with the moves, it's honestly a lot of fun. Not only is it a good battle, but it also hints at a lot of things that come later in Chapter 4. We see more hints at Kris and the Knight's compliance, we see Susie acting more like the main protagonist, and it even brings in PK Starstorm. Absolutely incredible. The only problem now is that if I'm ever hit by any other enemy, all I can think to myself is, I beat the Knight. How am I struggling against this? Everything about the build-up in the fight itself was amazing, but the question remains, what does any of it actually mean? I believe that the original game is supposed to reference what RPG games were in the past, slaying monsters and gaining strength. But by playing the game like a traditional original RPG like the one in Chapter 3, it can lead to dire consequences, with what's shown warning the player of the things that could happen if they continue killing. What we were shown could quite possibly be what occurs between the main parts of the prophecy. It's quite possible that through the weird route, while there's still gonna be 3 heroes, 2 of them aren't gonna be Susie and Ralsei. But we don't know for sure. It's like Gerson said, stories change all the time. What we saw here today could just be an interpretation of what happens in the prophecy. The future isn't entirely set in stone, and in the end, your choices do matter. Well, that was certainly an intense video for 3 and 4. Leave some comments on things I didn't mention or your own interpretations. I've got so many different things I want to talk about, but I've also got a massive list of videos I need to make. What can I say? It's the summer of Kustopia. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Now, when I first started this YouTube channel, I had no idea what I wanted to actually do, in terms of both content and intent. I knew that I wanted to be a big shot, but just doing it for money and fame seemed shallow. It wasn't until last year that I realized what I wanted to do with my content and my channel as a whole. I just wanted to be creative with what I make, while simultaneously encouraging other people to be creative as well. But most importantly, I just wanted to enjoy myself while making content, and I came to this realization after listening to my friends talk about their OCs. Just hearing them talk so passionately about what they created made me really happy. So that's why today, I'm gonna cover and rate your guys' Undertale and Deltarune OCs. And unlike before where I kinda just gave out joke ratings, today I'm actually gonna rate them. I'll give a rundown on the character's backstory, appearance, and abilities, and then go over what I liked about them and what I feel like could be worked on. Giving a letter grade on what I liked, disliked, and overall how I felt about the character. Kinda like Tenna's TV time, and if I wasn't given any artwork of the character, I'll just put a placeholder character that I feel like matches the description given. Now, the reason I didn't give any actual criticism in my previous video was because I just felt like it wouldn't be cool. So many people were willing to send me their creations, and critiquing them kinda just didn't sit right with me. But after thinking about it for a while and talking with some other people, I realized that when it comes to creating art, whether it be video making or drawing, people need criticism in order to improve. So that's why today, I'm gonna try my best to be critical. Which is gonna be rough, because I'm not that critical of a person. But I'm gonna do my best to be critical this time because I want to improve and I want you guys to improve as well. And as always, if you're an artist and you see an OC that you like, go ahead and make some fan art. I'll even post it on my channel if you email it to me. And if you're wondering why I'm talking a little bit fast for this video, it's because I'm trying to ad-lib more stuff, because I've been listening to my old audio for my videos, and I just kinda sound like a robot when I talk, because I'm reading directly off a script. It's just that recording my own voice seems to be the weakest part of my channel, and I really do want to get better at that. Now today, we've got some absolutely insane OCs, from one that's just a giant smelly worm that rots the items in your inventory, and another that takes on the entire city of Birmingham in a fight. This is gonna be crazy, so sit back and let's get into it. Yuri is a human girl from a Deltarune AU called Titanrune, a universe where, although Dark Worlds still exist, there are no monsters in the Light World, with characters like Susie, Noelle, and Berdly all being humans. Yuri was a foster child, picking up skills like art and cooking from her time bouncing between families, eventually going off to her dream college and befriending her roommate Susie. But in order to get into her dream college in the first place, Yuri had to partake in a blood ritual to communicate with an evil entity known as Indiviak, the god of evil, the lord of shadows, and the ruler of the true Dark World. Indiviak told Yuri that in exchange for getting into her dream college, she'd have to give up control of her body and give it to the player. Indiviak would then start creating dark fountains, and in this universe, humans who enter them transform into monsters, with Yuri transforming into the Delta Knight, a demon marionette that wears knight armor. Indiviak created these fountains and convinced other people to do so as well, in order to bring about the Roaring and take over the Light World. Yuri and her friends would then travel throughout these dark worlds and battle a titan within each and every one, eventually coming face to face with Indiviak. After realizing the battle would never end because the heroes were too determined and Indiviak was too powerful, Indiviak surrenders and leaves. Eventually, after the battle, Yuri would get disconnected from the player's control and live happily ever after with her friends. Within the Light World, Yuri has white skin, long black hair, red eyes, has a white shirt with a black stripe, long shorts, brown boots, and a red beanie. Now initially, Yuri and Indiviak didn't have any actual art, but then I got a message from my friend Melly Fandoms. Now I already told them that I was working on another Undertale and Deltarune OC video, and they just decided to message me out of the blue that they were bored and they needed something to work on. So I was like, okay, you want to make some art for the OCs that don't have any? And they were like, yeah, okay, sure. And out of the kindness of their heart, created these. So thank you Melly Fandoms for being completely bored out of your mind. Be sure to check them out because they are actually a really good friend of mine, and I feel like their art deserves more attention. Now in combat, Yuri dual wields a sword and a knife, along with firing large balls of dark energy and a stun laser. The balls of dark energy and the stun laser were 2 spells that were granted to her after her deal with Indiviak. Indiviak itself wears red armor, a red cape with a Deltarune logo on the back of it, a horn mask that covers their face, and has a titan form. Indiviak is also said to be a genius inventor, creating android replicas of everyone it's made a deal with, alongside creating the Night Implants, cybernetics that were used to mind control Death's Holiday. Now, the creator sent me a lot of information, but due to the amount of OCs I have to cover today, I can't really get to all of it. But they did want me to let you all know that Titanrune is open to the public, so if you want to create your own interpretations or add on to the story, you can go ahead and do that. I also highly recommend the creator to make their own videos. You've sent me so much, and even though I can't cover everything, you can. Overall, this was a pretty interesting AU, but what's crazy is that the creator not only predicted Kris making some sort of mysterious deal, but they also predicted that Death's Holiday might be the night. The idea of humans becoming monsters in the Dark World is honestly super interesting. The idea to turn Yuri into a marionette knight was also really creative. Giving Indiviak a red color palette also makes it seem like it's supposed to mirror the soul from the original Deltarune, ripping away the free will of a human while trying to serve their own agenda. I think the only critique I have about this AU is the fact that Indiviak just kinda leaves at the end. Like he's not defeated in some monumental way, it just says that he leaves. I'm also just not personally a fan of multiversal powered beings. I don't know, that much power just seems kinda boring to me. But overall, a very good OC, and a cool alternate reality to the story of Deltarune as a whole. It just makes me wonder what monster Yuri would be in the original Deltarune. Questionnaire Dripton with a top hat, or for my own sake QDT, was an angel whose home was attacked by an entity known as True Nothingness. In order to save his home, QDT gathered the remaining angels and battled against True Nothingness, with him finally absorbing it into himself. Because of this, QDT's body became extremely unstable. Because of this, the other angels locked him away in an empty void, with him not breaking free until he gained full control of his body. After this, QDT began traveling the multiverse, fixing broken AUs with ease. QDT's soul is said to be in a higher dimensional shape, and to the human eye, it just looks like an ever-changing mass of shapes and colors. QDT can copy any kind of ability, he has a handbag with every single soul type in it, he can shapeshift, and he has 5 creations that can turn into kaijus for whatever reason. Now, like I said earlier, I'm just not that big of a fan of multiversal beings and overpowered characters, and QDT being able to fix any AU with ease is just kinda boring to me. Like, oh no, our universe is gonna be destroyed, what do we do? Oh yeah, we can just call the angel that fixes everything. Having a character like that can just take away stakes. While I do find a lot of multiversal and overpowered characters uninteresting, there are concepts of this character I really like. The idea of some kind of biblically accurate angel wearing a top hat and having a handbag is pretty funny to me. And him having a soul that's incomprehensible to the human eye is also super interesting. Overall, while this character does have some pretty interesting aspects about him, I'm just not really that big of a fan of overpowered characters. Maybe make him struggle with controlling the true nothingness inside of him. I feel like giving this powerful character a very prominent weakness would make him a lot more interesting. Brainicus is a purple octopus monster that was once a member of the Core's construction team. But after WD Gaster fell into the core, Brainicus began feeling like his work environment was unsafe. Because of this, Brainicus became fearful and paranoid, causing him to move to Waterfall, setting up shop behind a waterfall. Brainicus has a big ego, believing himself to be the smartest monster in the underground, gleefully willing to show off his inventions and intelligence to anyone who'd listen. But despite his narcissism, Brainicus keeps himself isolated from his fellow monsters, wanting to make a big comeback later on and impress everybody with what he made. He even believes that with his smarts, he could take the title of Royal Scientist away from Alphys. Honestly, it's pretty cool that we have another OC that wants the title of Royal Scientist. It makes me wonder what the Underground does to choose a new Royal Scientist in the first place. Each Royal Scientist OC has some sort of robot they've made in the past, so it'd be pretty cool if the Royal Scientist competition was just them putting their robots in an arena and having them duke out, with the last one standing granting the title of Royal Scientist for its creator. I mean, yeah, if that was the case, I'd understand why Alphys is the Royal Scientist, because Mettaton would kick ass in a fight. Anyways, Brainicus would then start creating inventions out of scrap he found at the dump, and during his fight, you need to outsmart him twice before you spare him. During combat, Brainicus attacks you with a variety of different gadgets and weapons, but the only one we physically see is a scrap gun. But in text, it also appears that he creates robots. After you outsmart and spare him, Brainicus becomes a lot more humble, admitting to the player that he's still got a lot to learn. Brainicus has purple spots all over his body, glasses, and 8 arms that he uses to create machines and gadgets more effectively. Honestly, Brainicus is the perfect example of an Undertale OC. He's got a good design, interesting abilities, and a fun personality. My favorite part about him is that his character actually adds a lot to the world building of Undertale. Like 2 OCs I've talked about in the past, he wants to become the Royal Scientist, and he was someone who worked on the core, while simultaneously not being too important to the main story of Undertale. And while there's not many Undertale and Deltarune OCs I necessarily dislike, my favorite kind of OCs can best be described by the egg in Deltarune. Not too important, not too unimportant. And Brainicus fits that category perfectly. What can I say? Yudi makes pretty good stuff. Ace is a Darkner and the older brother of Lancer. He was lost in a different dark world, and judging by his design, he's a lot more serious and jaded than his younger brother. In combat, he uses spades to switch up the party's health bars, which, after playing Chapter 3, makes a lot of sense, since Lancer can change the rules of the battle as well. Honestly, the concept of Lancer having a more serious older brother is interesting, but I do wish the creator gave more for Ace's backstory. Was he always this jaded and serious, or was he just as innocent as Lancer? Overall, while I'm a bit disappointed we don't get that much backstory for him, I do like his design and abilities. I also really like how his name is a reference to the Ace of Spades. It makes him sound like the Card Kingdom's secret weapon, and I think it'd be pretty interesting to see the reason why Ace didn't petrify in the Dark World. Diamond is a casino-themed shadow monster that was created by another shadow creature named Ace. She wears a crimson vest, a top hat, and a creepy smiling mask that hides a human face behind it. And in her sprite design, she appears to be heterochromic. Within combat, Diamond can shapeshift using the power of shadows, but prefers a female-looking form. She can also use card-based attacks along with creating objects out of shadows, but because of some unknown trauma, she doesn't like doing it, opting to use a scythe instead. She's got a brother named King, not the character from Deltarune, who hates her because of her crude humor. Diamond is loud, boisterous, obsessed with anime, and her favorite beverage is sparkling ice, because, and I quote, "it's cooler than water." I mean, there's an above 0% chance some of you guys watching this video are ice cube suckers. While Diamond is said to be a very powerful being, she often loses fights because of her desire to toy with her opponents instead of actually fighting them. And I think the best part about her is that she has her own theme. Overall, a very neat character, and I feel like her being powerful is fine, because her strength is countered by a very glaring weakness. What I do feel like should be changed is Diamond's casino motif. Judging from her design and the designs of the other characters I was given, she seems like she'd fit in more in a carnival or circus-like world. Hell, her scythe looks a lot like a carnival cane. Overall, a really cool character, and I love the fact that she has a theme song. And I'm pretty sure she's the first OC I've ever received that has a theme song. But that's gonna change later on, just you wait. Sarah is a human girl and the first ever human child to fall into the underground. She was found by Azrael with a large knife lodged into her chest, but because of that horrific sight, Azrael fled in terror, leaving her dying and helpless. All hope seemed lost for Sarah until she was found by Gaster, who took her to the True Lab and saved her. Sorta. In reality, because of her dying body, she was revived by magic, with her body being an empty shell, kinda like Flowey. But unlike Flowey, who became bitter and resentful over time, Sarah lived a happy life with Gaster. But then, we all know what happens to Gaster. But after being alone for God knows how long, Sarah finally escaped after Alphys opened the door to the true lab. I love the detail that because Sarah's technically not alive, her body hasn't grown at all. But despite this, her hair's grown longer, which could be a reference to how when corpses decompose, their hair and fingernails appear to be growing longer. But this is just the corpses shrinking and decomposing. Before losing Gaster, Sarah was a happy, playful, and childish girl. But after his disappearance, she became tense, paranoid, and willing to attack anyone she deemed a threat. But after what she's been through, I honestly don't blame her. The first thing we learn about her is that she has a knife lodged in her chest. Someone please just give this girl a hug. Within the very small amount of times we've seen Sarah in combat, she fights with a pair of scissors, and when she loses those, her next best attack is throwing random objects at people. And if that doesn't work, she just runs away. Now, Sarah comes from an Undertale webtoon known as Upside Down, which was emailed to me by one of the creator's friends. Now, I've never actually read a webtoon before. The only thing I know about them is that my friend in high school literature class was obsessed with it, but I decided to give it a shot, and I really like this webtoon. But what sucks is that the author seems to have stopped making them. It's been a year since the last chapter was uploaded, and I desperately want to see Sarah become happy again. But if the author really did stop making this series, then I canonically adopted her and she lived happily ever after. Overall, Sarah's a really great character, and I don't want to spoil her design changes throughout the series because she goes through a lot. I don't want to spoil anything because it's a really good webtoon, so please go check it out for yourself. But yeah, Sarah's amazing and she deserves a loving family. Sensation Tail Asgore served as the representative of monsterkind after the destruction of the barrier on August 16, 2015. He made contact with humankind, and after the monster race's detainment, he met with Vice President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., and because they both had dead sons, they bonded. And with the help of 44th United States President Barack Obama, they made the existence of monsterkind known. It's gonna get crazier from here, so just stick with me. As Asgore begins to help the public adapt to the revelation of monsterkind's existence, he tells Frisk and his people to hide the fact that monsters can absorb human souls, the same fact that caused the original human and monster war in the first place. Because the integration of monsterkind into society was going a bit rough, Asgore became a spokesman, or spokesmonster, aiming to give his people equal rights to humans. Endorsing Hillary freaking Clinton in the 2016 presidential election? Oh god, it gets worse. After the election in 2017, Mettaton would then be assassinated, garnering sympathy towards monsterkind, and for a while, monsters were seen as kind and helpful. That wasn't until Muffet would move to the British city of Birmingham. Because of her failing business, Muffet would then begin trying to extort people for their money, which drew the attention of law enforcement. But because Muffet was able to absorb 6 human souls, she began to wreak havoc on the city of Birmingham, killing 100,000 people before she was brought down by the British military. Genuinely, how do you come up with this? I genuinely don't think the sentence, Muffet fights the entire city of Birmingham, has ever been said in human history until now. Anyways, after the revelation that monsters were able to absorb human souls was leaked to the public, humanity began an event known as the Crackdown, with humans going around and forcibly detaining monsters. Luckily, Asgore was able to escape and is now taking refuge in a camp, still believing that violence won't solve this conflict. What the hell did I just read? Overall though, this was a very interesting what-if scenario, and it raised a lot of ethical questions on if humanity should take action against monsters for what they're capable of, despite how kind and peaceful most of them are. And yeah, Muffet being responsible for the deaths of many is pretty par for the course. Fran is a human trans girl that lives in a post-pacifist world. Despite being easily frightened, she'll always stand up for herself and face her fears, giving her the bravery soul. Fran has pink hair, glasses, a black tank top, a cream-colored sweater, black shorts, and black thigh highs. I actually really like the design, and the idea of someone who's easily frightened but still faces their fears having the bravery soul is a really cool concept. The only thing I'm not really a fan of is a lack of backstory, and not every character has to have a complex and intricate backstory, but I'd like at least a little bit. Swapfel Kara is a variant of Kara that went through the pacifist route, making friends and gaining a sense of self. And throughout the pacifist route, they began to take more and more control away from the player, talking more on their own and making their own decisions. But despite all that buildup, the creator doesn't say what happens after Kara gains full control, which is kind of a bummer. They don the iconic green sweater with a yellow stripe, along with a red undershirt. They also enjoy peppermint bark. Honestly, controlling a character that doesn't want to be controlled is a pretty neat concept. I just wish the creator did a little bit more with it. The duck is a small, taco-loving yellow duck and the best friend of Papyrus, enjoying his spaghetti and his love for saying nyeh. It's also friends with the bird that carries you across the disproportionately small gap and every Washua in existence, and it's unkillable in every single route. Overall, despite how basic the OC is, I kinda love it. The thought of a small little duck sitting on Papyrus's shoulder and hyping him up as he tries to capture the human is kinda beautiful. Imagine the tiny little duck flying Papyrus to the ground to make a grand, dramatic entrance. The only thing that should be adjusted is that the duck needs a small little wool hat. Almost all the monsters in Snowdin have a lot of fur, have some kind of ice motif to them, or wear sweaters. It gets cold in Snowdin, and having feathers won't cut it. Overall, despite its simplicity, it's very amusing. And I think now is a good time to explain my thoughts on OC backstories. Like I said earlier, not every OC needs a complex backstory, but I do think it should be proportional to how important you want to make the character. If you want a character with a funny gimmick or design and that's it, yeah, you don't really need a complex backstory. But if you want to make a fallen human OC or someone connected to Gaster, I feel like a decently large backstory is needed to make that character compelling. But this OC falls into the silly category and will get the coveted K rank. Guy is a Royal Guard member whose personality is a mixture of Undyne, Sans, and Queen. He has a tendency to use violence like Undyne, he's lazy and doesn't do his job like Sans, and has the random humor of Queen. Not only is he a member of the Royal Guard, but he's also part of a small society of top hat enthusiasts. Makes you wonder what that club's hierarchy system looks like. Do more top hats mean a higher status? Anyways, Guy just looks like a Roblox character. He's got a red torso, yellow arms, and a head. He's also got a black top hat, boots, shades, a chest plate with a Deltarune symbol on it, and a cocky grin. Anyways, while he does resemble a Roblox character and I don't think he'd fit in with the other monsters in the underground, I appreciate the pixel art. But what stinks is that Guy doesn't seem to have any kind of abilities. But judging from his design, I feel like he'd use bombs or knives. I don't know, but I feel like a character with that wide of a grin would use those kinds of weapons. Overall, Guy's a neat character, and I'm happy for more Royal Guard OCs. Fraternity and Serenity are two human boys who are ambiguously brothers. They're both homeless and were abandoned by their parents. And because of this, the two travel across the world together, only sleeping and cleaning themselves at hotels. In order to gain money, they explore and beat up monsters, and because of their odd behavior, the duo don't really have too many friends. Beating people up for money doesn't really help with that, but despite their lack of connections, Serenity has a habit of getting easily attached to older people due to the duo's lack of parental figures. In terms of appearance, both look similar to the Poncho human from Undertale, with Fraternity having a red color palette and a smile on his face, while Serenity's green with a neutral expression. As their designs suggest, Fraternity is the confident one, talking for the duo and acting as the leader, but he's a lot more guarded than his brother, and very protective of him. Serenity is more insecure and doesn't like to talk, but seems to be more trusting than his brother. Within combat, the duo have pretty impressive athletic abilities. They also use hammers and fire magic. Serenity can create copies of himself and turn giant, while Fraternity has a special ability that he keeps secret. The duo can also kick fireballs back and forth to make them bigger, which is honestly a really cool ability. By the way, these two don't actually have any magical abilities. They're creating fireballs and doing all this other cool stuff through the power of their souls and the Holy Spirit. These two quite literally have God on their side. Obviously, this OC is based off of Mario and Luigi from the RPG games, and while I don't think these two can beat Sephiroth in a fight, I do think they're a pretty cool duo. Undyne, the hero of souls, is an Undyne variant that was able to maintain the determination in her body for a little bit longer, giving Alphys time to send her the 6 human souls, and with that power, she gains the ability to use all of their weapons, even taking away Frisk's weapon in the process. In combat, she can change her soul color on command and even destroy the battle box. But what's really interesting about this version of Undyne is how you defeat her. Like in the Omega Flowey fight, you have to focus on each soul individually to stop them from attacking you. But instead of the souls rebelling against Flowey, you're corrupting them so Undyne can't use their powers in combat, with you needing to avoid every single attack from an individual soul in order to corrupt it. The idea of a reverse Flowey fight is super interesting, but what I'm personally not that big of a fan of is the design. While Undyne having all the Soul's weapons in combat is a cool concept, I feel like it's just a bit too much when mixed with the fact that each part of her body is colored to match a different soul like the Power Rangers Megazord. Like maybe you could have the souls surrounding her like a ring, but that's just a suggestion. Overall, a really cool concept, and the fight itself would make a very interesting what if. Screwco is a jellyfish monster from an Undertale AU called Aquatail. He's a jester for an underwater circus and acts extremely shy and reserved. But what's unique about him is that sometimes he changes personalities, becoming a female jellyfish named Krusco, a cheeky, silly monster who loves explosives. That's right, it's a jellyfish Moon Knight. As Screwco, he dons a blue jester hat and a blue and brown striped jester suit. But as Krusco, she wears a purple striped jester outfit and eyelashes that signify the gender change. Within combat, Screwco throws balls of goo, while Krusco uses bombs, and both can use telekinesis and their tentacles in a fight. Overall, the switching between personalities concept is very interesting, and what makes it even better is that some actual jellyfish can change both their color and their gender, meaning that Screwco being a jellyfish adds a lot to this character. With a great design, gimmick, and abilities, what's not to like about this character? Deacon Three Eyes is a spider-like monster from the Underpit universe, an AU I talked about in my last Undertale OC video. In this universe, the underground becomes a post-apocalyptic world after Frisk dies and the 6 human souls go missing. Deacon was once just an everyday monster who liked pirates, living on Mount Siphon, an underground mountain found in Waterfall. She collected as much pirate-themed memorabilia as she could in the dump, using the eye patches that she found to cover up her 3 blind eyes. After the chaos began and the passing of her mother, Deacon would form a gang, recruiting people from her hometown to join it. She enlisted a sleazy businessman turned gang treasurer, whose full name I won't even attempt to pronounce. She also recruited Repair Randall, a water monster skilled at crafting and repairing things. The 3 would begin scavenging for supplies, finding a small island full of booze, cigars, and other addictive goods, which was dubbed The Landing. Deacon would grow her empire manufacturing these goods, and because of what they produced, their gang was dubbed the Smoker Coalition, based off of the smokers from the movie Waterworld. Deacon's pirate obsession didn't just stop at her outfit. She and her gang were labeled as pirates by the Royal Guard due to their tendency to steal weapon stockpiles. Within combat itself, Deacon uses a flare gun, a cutlass, a coin, and a Molotov cocktail. She also has a special attack where she uses a mounted machine gun. Deacon Three Eyes has long, unruly black hair, yellow eyes, a crimson neckerchief, a brown 6-sleeved coat, puffy black pants, and black boots. Overall, a very cool character. She's just trying to survive like everybody else, and she also seems to only go after Royal Guard shipments, but at the same time, she's getting the entirety of Waterfall addicted to nicotine and alcohol. And the creator also said that despite how she looks, Deacon has no relation to Muffet whatsoever, and I think that's fine. In fact, I think she'd kick Muffet's ass. She deserves it for what she pulled back in Birmingham. Smelton was once a normal monster that had the properties of metal, but one day, to help Alphys with her experiments, he allowed her to inject him with determination, resulting in his body becoming unstable and turning into liquid metal. But because of his metallic physiology, he was able to harden and reform, being able to harness determination to create weapons with his body, and because of his newfound abilities, he was able to join the Royal Guard. Smelton is a kind and funny guy, but he also takes his job very seriously. His favorite food also appears to be yellow snow, which is something I never thought I'd read. Within combat, Smelton uses shiny, sharp sticks that he throws at his opponents, and with his body, he can create small bombs that are detonated through a mixture of magic and determination. Physical attacks aren't very effective against Smelton due to his ability to liquefy and reharden his metal body, but his glaring weakness is that if he creates too many bombs, his body becomes unstable and falls apart, due to each bomb being created by a chunk of himself. Overall, Smelton is actually an extremely interesting character in regards to the determination experiments. A monster that has the ability to overcome the drawbacks of determination through its own unique body is actually an extremely interesting concept. And the fact that he's a Royal Guard member makes it even better. I also like how his name Smelton references how he can change his body between solid and liquid metal. It also makes me wish we had more OCs that were related to the determination experiments. Umbra is an entity that comes from a universe where Alphys injected a flower with a substance known as Shade Essence, which was a mix between magic and determination. And because of this, the flower with Azrael's dust transformed into Umbra. Umbra has the ability to steal magical powers from people he's around long enough, becoming a shadow version of the person he wants to steal from. And as the human travels through the underground, they encounter monsters that are actually Umbra in disguise. And besides his transformation abilities, he's very similar to Flowey in terms of plot. Overall, Umbra's a pretty cool OC, and if he was actually in Undertale, he'd add a lot of tension. Maple was a 19-year-old girl and was supposed to be a Frisk from an unknown AU, but after her universe was attacked by a group of evil Sans variants, she was found by Cross Sans and was taken in by Nightmare Sans out of pity, joining his group. One day, Nightmare's gang went out to scavenge, leaving Mabel alone at their base, and when the group returned, they told Mabel that Nightmare was killed, bringing back his dust and a corrupted black apple, one of the apples that gave Nightmare Sans his abilities, with the apple that was brought back being his soul. In an emotional rage at losing her guardian, Maple ate the apple and gained his abilities. After this, the gang disbanded, leaving her to take care of Nightmare's business on her own. Maple has brown pants, black boots, a dark green button-up shirt, a red belt, and an orange skirt. She also has a pearl necklace, black clawed hands, and black tendrils on her body, similar to Nightmare Sans. Overall, I like the unique abilities for this character, and the fact that she lost her family and friends twice is really interesting. I also think that it'd be cool if she saw hallucinations of Nightmare Sans due to the fact that she literally ate his soul. Serene is a male pyrope that joined the Society of Underground Liberation, an organization within the underground that posed as a terrorist group, who aimed to try and steal the human souls and pass through the barrier. But in reality, they were created by the high ranks of the Royal Guard to try and train their members in real-life combat situations, keeping the real intent of the group hidden from the public and their lower members. Serene actually believed in Soul's cause, wanting to be free from the underground, but soon discovered that the group was fake. After learning this, he began to train, wanting to actually try and take the human souls and free monster kind. Because of his training, Serene was able to make his bomb attacks a lot stronger, being able to cause environmental damage with their impacts, and even created a scythe with bombs on it. Within combat, Serene can use smoke bombs to blind the player and turn their soul gray, along with creating dents in the ground that the player can hide in to avoid his attacks. Overall, I think this character is pretty neat, and I appreciate the fact that someone used one of my ideas for their OC. It's like the creator thought of ways to turn Pyrope into an actual boss, and knowing Pyrope's powers, this works pretty well. Robin is a human child who comes from a universe known as Undertale, Determination, and Deceit, a world where Toriel was killed by Frisk, and after the death of Asgore, Undyne takes the throne, redeclaring that all humans who fall into the underground must die, militarizing monster kind for the next time a human falls down. Robin's story takes place around 2 to 5 years after Undertale. They're a sneaky, cunning little shyster who does shady, small-scale jobs and scams people they dislike for money. Robin ended up falling into the underground after they and a few other friends traveled to Mount Ebbet looking for treasure, with Robin's so-called friends betraying them, pushing them off Mount Ebbet and into the underground. Throughout their journey, Robin is cynical and willing to do whatever it takes to get ahead, the same viewpoint that got them betrayed in the first place. But after meeting monsters and making friends, Robin's viewpoint slowly begins to change. What's interesting about this change is that it makes Flowey mad, as conceptually, Robin's initial morals align with Flowey's viewpoint, to do whatever it takes to survive. And the concept of them working together in the beginning before their ideals change would be really interesting to see. Robin has a red v-neck shirt with a white stripe, a brown bag, brown gloves, baggy cargo pants, and brown boots. They're also extremely snarky and speak with a Brooklyn accent. Robin is such an interesting human character to look at, as we don't get many hardened, more hostile human OCs that fall into the underground, and them slowly learning to trust others and grow would be extremely cool to see. Honestly, Robin would make such a compelling protagonist, and deserves a fan game of their own. Mr. Mold is a giant red worm that lives in Hotland, and his entire gimmick is that he smells really bad. Within combat, he'll always appear with another monster, and each turn Mr. Mold's in the battle, he'll deal 1 damage to you no matter what. He'll also begin rotting the items in your inventory, and if you decided to eat the rotting item, you'll take damage. In order to spare Mr. Mold, you have to go to your act menu and spray him with a can of deodorant. And after the fight, in order to unrot your items, you have to go to Alphys and pay her to unrot them. Overall, Mr. Mold is just a quirky little character, and I think it's really funny how sad he is because of how bad he smells. He's just a ridiculous little fella, but if I actually had to deal with him in-game, I'd get angry, because that rot mechanic genuinely sounds unpleasant. Minus was once a hacker from a world called the Playerverse, who ended up getting des-holidayed, waking up as a Kara from a genocide run that was just beginning. Minus discovered that they had some kind of admin-like abilities, allowing them to change their appearance, and once they came face to face with the player-controlled Frisk, Minus deleted the entirety of Undertale from the player's computer. After this, Minus becomes an outcode, being able to explore alternate universes, eventually becoming an enemy of Error Sans, with what they did to anger him being unknown. Minus has white skin, black and white striped hair with forehead bangs, an ahoge in the shape of a minus, a white shirt with the division symbol on it, black shorts, and fading black legs. Because Minus isn't very skilled with texturing, their entire body is incredibly hard, meaning that they can whip around their hair and use it like a club. And in order to communicate, they speak in either wingdings or full caps. Overall, while I'm not personally a fan of these more meta characters, it's a cute OC with a great design. And the bit about Minus's texturing is very good. Coral is a snake monster that was born in Waterfall, around the time the 6th human soul was acquired. She works as a waitress in MTT Resort, but struggles due to her shyness and selective mutism, being unable to speak in certain social situations, befriending Burger Pants, and wishes to finally be free from the underground. Despite this desire, her life in the underground has been a happy one, with her befriending a lot of different people. The creator also calls her a boss monster and says because of this, she has a soul. But all monsters have souls, with the boss monster souls just persisting longer after death. And I'm also pretty sure boss monsters are specifically the goats. The author also said that Coral is supposed to look like a corn snake, but to me, she looks a lot like a coral snake, which is what I thought her name was based off of. Nevertheless, she's got a purple top, a maroon skirt, and flowing red hair. In battle, she uses a combination of her powerful tail, great physical strength, and deadly venom to defeat enemies. She also carries around anti-venom just in case. Because of her reptile-like body, she isn't a fan of the cold, generally trying to avoid Snowden. And in combat, if you feed her cold items, her attack and defense drop. Overall, a pretty cute OC, and it's crazy how little snake-like characters there are in Undertale. Daphne is a human girl and the wielder of the Perseverance Soul. Before falling into the underground, she was a Girl Scout, and within her journey, she uses a bag as a whip, bath bombs as smoke bombs, and her notebook as a boomerang. She has a purple sweater, light purple pants and shoes, purple cloudy glasses, and a nice little star in her hair. I also like how the creator made her a Girl Scout, because it seems to take a lot of perseverance to go up to people's doors and ask them to buy stuff from you. Overall, a really neat character. But I do wish she had a little more backstory and personality, because this is one of the fallen humans we're talking about. But overall, still good. Nyx is a spider monster and the younger sister of Muffet. Despite not being as social or openly greedy as Muffet, She helps her sister with her business, handling their advertising and flyers. Nyx is a skilled artist and prefers to draw and cook instead of socializing, leading to her bonding with Alphys over their shared nerdy interests. What's even cooler is that judging from her personality, she could also be friends with Coral, the OC I just talked about. It's just weirdly nice when two different OCs can realistically become friends. Anyways, Nyx shares a similar color scheme to her sister, with her dress being darker and her hair being longer. She also has bow ties on each of her wrists. Within combat, Nyx will do absolutely nothing, telling the human that she doesn't want to fight and spares them instantly. But during the genocide route, after the player kills Muffet, she'll fearfully confront them, attacking the player with her webs and fangs. And no matter what you do, you have to kill her. Giving Muffet a sister is honestly a really cool idea, and it'd make the genocide route a lot sadder, because judging from Nyx's personality, she'd definitely want to evacuate, but doesn't because her sister wants to stay. It also adds more detail to Muffet's operation as a whole, and overall, just a very good character. Jace Eastwood, or Hex, is a human blogger and streamer who's popular on a fictional online platform known as Flix. One day, Hex streamed himself exploring a cave, with the cave being connected to Mount Ebit, resulting in him falling off the mountain. He was then transported to a strange void, where a mysterious figure used the last of its energy to transport the slowly dying Hex to Snowdin. Despite being alive, Hex had no memory of who he was, with his only belongings being a cracked phone and some old videos. He would then eventually join Frisk in their journey to the surface, with the duo becoming like siblings. They would also be joined by Grillby, who the creator wanted to ship Hex with, which is perfectly okay. If you want to make an OC to ship with an actual canon character, go right ahead. Anyways, because of the energy that transported Hex to Snowdin, his soul became corrupted, giving him the power to create small sparks of electricity, allowing him to power up electronics. He can also absorb heat attacks, but he's also weak to physical and other magical attacks, being prone to bleeding easily. Hex has fingerless gloves, green hair, gray pants, and a green and blue hoodie. I think it'd be a cool concept of him having a dead phone, and through his electricity powers, he'd slowly begin to charge it back up, using the videos on it to slowly regain his memory. I think Hex is a cool character, and giving more attention to Grillby is always a win. He has such a cool design, and it's such a shame he's barely in the game. I think my only issue is that it'd be kinda hard to ship an OC with a character that doesn't really talk or show emotions. It's honestly such a shame we don't know that much about Grillby, but hey. That's what interpretation's for. Ben, or Beatrice, is a young monster who lived in East Hotland, and another OC that was based on my concept of the Society of Underground Liberation. He dreamed of one day becoming a member of the Royal Guard, but after his home was attacked by a very early version of Soul, an accident resulted in the death of his mother. And after his mother's loss, Ben never got rid of his green hoodie, as it was the last thing she ever made for him. As an adult, his hoodie's ripped and worn due to constant use, with the green color darkening due to all the dirt on it. Overall, I enjoy Ben's backstory, as it would definitely drive him to becoming a member of the Royal Guard even more. And if he ever finds out about Soul's true intentions, I feel like whatever happens would be crazy. Telasdam is a horse darkener and the final boss of the Festival Dark World, residing in the desert town of Compestival. He's the undefeated racing champion due to him constantly cheating, and if he can't cheat to win, he'll start doping to increase his physical abilities. Within the story, Telasdam races against the Fun Gang, initially defeating them through cheating, but after Susie exposes him, he attacks. Within combat, Telasdam turns your soul blue, forcing you to avoid hurdles and bouncing barrels. He also takes turns to juice up, increasing the speed and power of his attacks. Telasdam also unknowingly holds a shadow crystal, with it being hidden inside his medal. As for his appearance, Telasdam has that first place medal around his neck, along with a suit that looks like a Formula 1 racing uniform. Telasdam is a very cool Deltarune OC that I could genuinely see be in a fight later down the line. I also really like the way the author implemented the Blue Soul. What I find especially cool is the fact that Telasdam is based off of Jovial Merriment from horse race testing, and I don't know how many of you guys get that reference, but I really like it. He's a really interesting OC, and it took me way too long to realize that his name is an anagram for medalist. Gamblet is a sentient slot machine that lives in the underground, created with the sole purpose of adding more gambling into Undertale. They've got a green machine body, mechanical legs, and one singular slot machine arm that people pull on to gamble. And while no backstory or personality was given, the creator said that there's a toxic Yuri relationship between it and Muffet, which is honestly genius. The greedy, money-hungry spider in a relationship with an object made specifically to take your money is kinda hilarious. Imagine the reason Muffet wanted so much money in the first place was not only to bring the ruined spiders to Hotland, but to also pay off her crippling gambling debt. Tor is a Darkner based off of Azrael's computer. He acts as Tenna's arch-nemesis due to him always trying to steal stuff from him, resulting in his imprisonment. He would have also acted as the secret boss of Chapter 3. Tor looks like a glitchy mess of code and has a computer head, with a crappy MS Paint bandit mask, eyes, and a smile. Despite not being given that much information, I kinda like it, because it'd make a lot of sense for Tenna to have beef with another entertainment system in the Dreemurr household. Amalex is an old amethyst golem that once served as a member of the Royal Guard, but ended up retiring and moving deep into Snowdin Forest, only leaving when he needed to purchase things, or to exchange jokes with Sans and the mysterious woman behind the door. Amalex had a hobby of fixing up old junk, which is how he found Gizmo, a small, rusty suit of armor. After fixing him up, Amalex decided to put an old crystal ball he found inside of Gizmo's chest, causing him to come to life. It turns out the crystal ball itself was magic, containing ancient spirits within it. Gizmo would see this old, pessimistic golem as a parental figure, which caused Amalex to visit town more often so Gizmo could hang out with the other kids and Papyrus. Gizmo began to dream about becoming a hero, wanting to join the Royal Guard just like his parental figure. He would ask Amalex to tell him stories about his time in the Royal Guard, wishing to become just as great as he was. Amalex is a large, imposing figure with glowing, shining white eyes and a spiked amethyst head. He also dons a large black robe. Gizmo is a lot shorter, with rusty yellow metal plating, a glowing green eye, and an old spotted cape, representing his desire to become a great hero. Within combat, Gizmo's attacks are both very creative and very weak, while Amalex's attacks are more organized and hit a lot harder. Despite being a great fighter, Amalex prefers not to fight. Gizmo, of course, is the exact opposite, willing to fight basically anyone. Both even have their own themes. Overall, I like both Amalex and Gizmo, and they both would honestly seem like characters I'd see in Undertale. It would be pretty messed up though if you had to kill Gizmo in a genocide run, because that is a literal child. If I had to give any criticism, I feel like Amalex's head should be a little smaller or his body a little broader. It's just that in almost every golem design I see, their head is smaller than their body. Icy Mask is a secret boss that was once a mask owned by Kris, but was taken away by Des after Kris kept using it to scare Noelle. The concept of freedom is something Icy Mask doesn't seem to understand, and all they want to do is be friends with Kris again, pranking people and having fun like the old days. But after seeing Carol Holiday, they mistake her for Des, kidnapping her and attempting to throw her into a giant oven. And within Icy Mask's fight, they turn your soul cyan, the color of patience. Icy Mask resembles the Icy mascot, with a chef's hat and several large tentacles, wielding various pizza-themed weapons in each hand. After their defeat, Icy Mask can drop either the chef's hat or the pizza saw blade depending on which way they were beaten. I really like this OC's backstory, and with what we know about Kris and Des, seeing the mask would definitely add another mental scar to Kris's ever-growing list. But I feel like if you wanted to go for a more cryptid squid route, do something more than just the tentacles. Making him more monstrous and scary would be interesting, since it would make Kris terrified of the Icy Mask, the same way they used to scare Noelle with it when they were kids. Just a really cool, well thought out secret boss overall. Man, I had to cover a crazy amount of OCs. But honestly, I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad you all were willing to share your creativity with me. After going through so many OCs, maybe I'll start talking about my own, but that's for another day. Thank you all for your crazy characters, and I will see you all in the next video. Okay, This is gonna be my most controversial video by far, and this is coming from a guy who made several power scaling videos and even one advocating for child murder. The latter sounds better with context, I swear. Now you might be asking, what heinous topic could Kustopia be talking about today? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna be talking about shipping. When I first started talking about Undertale and Deltarune, I swore to myself that I'd stay away from the nefarious rabbit hole that is shipping. When I was in middle school, I used to dabble a bit in the shipping community, and boy does that stuff spark wars. There's a question that I saw floating around Twitter recently, asking if you'd rather have a power scaling son or a shipping daughter. And let me just say that the power scaling son fears the shipping daughter. Hell, Death Battle, a series dedicated to power scaling, wouldn't touch shipping with a 10-foot pole. Now when it comes to Deltarune, there's a lot of very interesting ships. We've got Asgore and Rudy, Asriel and Des, Toriel and that store clerk guy, Togore and Chester, and basically any member of the Fun Gang and Susie. But the two main factions that I tend to see online are the Cruzites, the Kris and Susie fans, and the Suzilians, the Susie and Noelle fans. Those aren't actually the real names, I just kinda made those up. And there's even some people who ship all three of them together, which is fine. While I do understand both sides of the shippings, I'm personally indifferent to both of them. That's because I ship something far beyond the realms of mutual attraction and chemistry. Susie can keep the reindeer because, ladies and gentlemen, I am a proud Kris and Berdly shipper. Yeah, get either your boos or your cheers out of the way, because today, I'm gonna be talking about why I believe Kris and Berdly is an S-tier ship. But before we begin, I wanted to share with you all some top-notch fan art created by YCS. It's an OC that I talked about in my Undertale and Deltarune OC video by the name of Minus, a character created by user Starry Cheese. The pixel art is honestly amazing, and if you want to be featured in a Kustopia video, go ahead and email me some fan art of stuff from my channel, or an OC that I covered previously. Anyways, thank you for this amazing fan art submission, and let's move on to talking about Peak. So you might be asking, Kus, why do you ship Kris and Berdly? Well, if you really want to know, it's because it's really funny, but I'll get more into that later. First, I think we should cover Kris and Berdly's relationship outside of the Soul's interference. Now, within the fandom, there seems to be this notion that Kris hates Berdly, which just isn't true at all. Now, I'm not saying they're the best of friends or anything, but from what we've seen, Kris definitely doesn't hate him. The biggest reasoning for this belief from what I could find was Kris's reaction to the player telling Ralsei that they were going to the festival with Berdly, screaming his name over and over like they were in disbelief the player would choose him. But despite this, I still don't think Kris hates Berdly. At the very worst, I'd see these two as friendly rivals. We know that the two of them play video games together, seen in Berdly's second fight in Chapter 2. He even brings up the fact that Kris cheats by wave dashing. In fact, he's so passionate about Kris's wave dashing that he complains about it to his employer, which is hilarious. Imagine thinking about someone to the point you complain about their gaming skills to an old woman who was probably around for the Deltarune equivalent of the Great Depression, which is actually really sad to think about. Poor Berdly, man. Anyways, like I said before, the two are both gamers, and I'm not sure how canon the Spamton sweepstakes are, but the two of them even play Minecraft together. It also seems like Kris enjoys pranking Berdly, which is something they used to do with Noelle. There's even a line in Chapter 2 where he tells Kris to shut up even though they didn't say anything, which implies that in the past, the two of them might have bantered more together. Kris even brought Berdly to the hospital after the events of Snowgrave, so it's quite obvious that Kris does not hate Berdly. They just like rage baiting him, which I mean, come on, who hasn't rage baited their friends before? People could also argue that Berdly doesn't seem to like Kris, due to how much he antagonizes and taunts them, but throughout the game, Berdly does have moments where it shows he definitely does like Kris. He expresses genuine relief that Kris survived being with Susie at the end of Chapter 1, he tries to bring specifically Kris over to the Queen's side in Chapter 2, he opens up to them about his feelings toward Noelle, which I can't really see him doing with any other character, he's genuinely touched if Kris gives him the present in Chapter 2, and within Chapter 4, he actually shows interest in going to the festival with Kris. Personally, one of my favorite Kris and Berdly scenes is the one where Kris tells Berdly to stand in front of Rudy's hospital window so he can get stuff thrown at him, with Berdly essentially telling Kris to get a job. Now, after everything I've said, it's clear that these two don't actually hate each other, but unlike the other big Deltarune ships, the two of them don't exactly have big on-screen moments that give it massive shipping power. But luckily for me, on-screen moments mean nothing in the face of delusion. But for real, Kris and Berdly as a pairing would be hilarious for so many different reasons. For one, imagine Susie, Noelle, and even Ralsei's reaction if Kris and Berdly started dating. Alright Kris, me and Noelle are gonna go explore the festival. By the way, who did you decide to bring anyway? Wait, why does your shirt say player 2? Kris? Who's player 1? If that's not real already, someone please make fan art of that. Because Kris and Berdly being a cringy gamer couple would be top tier. Not only would the ship be funny from an outsider's perspective, but their dynamic together would be amazing as well. Even if the two of them were in some kind of romantic relationship, I'd like to think that they'd keep their one-sided rivalry, because Berdly and Kris competing to see who can solve puzzles faster was a top 10 chapter 2 moment. Sometimes I forget this, but the rivals to lovers trope is honestly really good. And you know throughout it all, Berdly's gonna be saying some cringy romantic stuff. I remember that someone once said that Berdly would refer to Kris as my lady, and I think about that often. And I know a lot of people find Berdly's romantic actions to be a bit creepy, but in my opinion, they're just cringy. He's just a dumb kid with a lot of self-worth issues, and honestly, if he was in a relationship with someone who sees through his crap while simultaneously being good to him, I feel like he'll grow a lot as a character. I mean, the way he developed in chapter 2 is what caused Berdly to become one of my favorite Deltarune characters. It's just too bad that he lost a lot of that development due to him thinking the cyberworld was a dream. But it's like Queen says, there's nothing wrong with him, he's just annoying. Also, I think it'd be hilarious if there was a moment where Berdly's just yapping about some nerd stuff to Susie and Kris, and while he's yammering, Susie turns to Kris and is like, seriously? This is the guy you like? And Kris just turns to her and says, yep. Out of every character you could ship Berdly with, I just see Kris working the best for him. Noelle already yearns for the dinosaur, and just sees Berdly as a friend. Susie may have been the one who kickstarted his character development, but she can't stand him and is already kinda interested in the deer. And Ralsei, I'll get back to you on that one, because I genuinely have no idea. But Kris fits that perfect balance of tolerating or even being friendly with Berdly, while simultaneously being able to humble him just in case he gets too abrasive. Both also seem to have quite a bit in common as well. Both are, of course, pro gamers, they're both knights in the dark world, and both have a weird relationship with Noelle. Another extremely interesting thing the two seem to have in common is they both have similar insecurities. Throughout the game, we never see Berdly's family, and with his backstory in chapter 2, it's very likely he's a victim of child neglect. After finally getting some crumbs of attention, he began to crave it, putting on this persona of some brilliant intellectual, terrified of what could happen if someone discovered his mediocrity. As for Kris, within chapter 4, we see how they used to wear those red horns as a way to fit in more with their family, being insecure about being the only human in hometown. Another insecurity that Kris seems to have is how they feel like they're living in Asriel's shadow. We can see that in the contrast of their shared bedroom, with Asriel having all these awards and Kris having nothing. We can see how this affects Kris, as in the Dark World, their bedroom is just Asriel's side of the room, hinting at how they might want some of the attention Asriel was getting. That combined with the dialogue when you interact with Asriel's clothes, along with the ways that Kris used to prank people when they were younger, might show how Kris has some insecurities about being overshadowed by their older brother. The way both Kris and Berdly seem to have insecurities at how people view them shows how they're more similar than we might initially think. But despite all this, you might be asking, Kus, aren't we essentially forcing Kris to get into a relationship with Berdly? Isn't that kinda evil to force someone into a relationship with a person they might not like in that way? Well that, my dear Kustopians, is what leads us to my last and personal favorite reason I love Curdly. It's the spite. We all know that as the soul, you and Kris don't exactly have the best relationship. We saw firsthand how violently they ripped us out of their chest and how hard they tossed us into that old birdcage. That beef was made crystal clear during chapter 4, as while Susie and Noelle were having a really nice moment together, we were Tom and Jerrying it up with Kris in Des's closet. Now, what does all this have to do with Berdly? Well, the reason I'm a Curdly shipper in the first place stemmed from this old art piece I found of Kris and Berdly holding hands while the soul desperately begs Kris to break up with him, to which Kris flips off the player. It shows us how if the player seems to dislike Berdly, Kris could start dating him as a way of spiting them. But what made it even better is that after the events of chapters 3 and 4, that spite ended up flipping. After seeing Kris's reaction to us telling Ralsei that we were going to the festival with Berdly, we can interpret that as Kris not wanting to go with him. And after all that holiday house shenanigans, we as players can go like, alright Kris, you wanna be a suspicious little gremlin and whack me with a hockey stick? Well, alright then, I guess you're going on a date with the gamer. It's crazy to me how much Deltarune art there is of Kris dating Berdly to anger the soul, and art of the soul forcing Kris to date Berdly to anger them. Or the secret third option where you just want to see Berdly happy. But I do think it's really funny how Kris and the soul can be in this giant feud and Berdly's blissfully unaware he's in the middle of it. Is it a little sad that a good chunk of this ship is supported by spite? Maybe, but you also have to take into account that it's really funny. Now, after everything I've told you guys, you might be saying how most of what I talked about is conceptual, and that all I'm going off of is how potentially good these two could be together. But isn't that what a vast majority of shipping is? Contemplating how good two characters could be together regardless of canon moments? This is shipping, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm the same person that ships Tenna and Metaton. But yeah, despite how a lot of my love for Curdly stems from the battle of spite between Kris and the Soul, their history together and interactions in-game could definitely make me believe these two would make a good couple. Also, I believe Berdly deserves some happiness. Like I said before, he's just a nerdy, insecure kid, and maybe with some friends or something even more, he'll become a lot better. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in to another one of my insane ramblings, and I will see you all in the next video. Now, if you didn't know already, I love being a YouTuber. Script writing's a lot of fun, editing videos is always a blast, and recording my own voice is certainly something. But despite how much work I put in these videos, I'll inevitably have to get a job. Sorry if that was a little scary for some of you, but all those job thoughts got me thinking. What does the employment scene look like in the Deltarune universe, specifically in the Dark Worlds? Each one might have a strong boss, but which of the main Dark World bosses is the best at being a boss? Today, my Kustopians, we will not be power scaling the main bosses of Deltarune. We'll be employment scaling them. We'll be taking a deep dive into what employment would be like under the main bosses of chapters 1 through 3 if you were a Darkner. And because Chapter 4's main boss isn't exactly in the hiring mood, we'll be swapping it out for the old man. In order to rate each of the Dark World's bosses, I'll be giving letter grade rankings in 4 different categories. The environment you'll be working in and the dangers you'll have to face, the work you'll have to do, the coworkers you'll have, and the quality of the bosses themselves. I'll go through each boss in order and give my final rankings at the end. And I will also not be including Castletown in my ranking because it's simply too awesome. Now, of course, a lot of this will be my own opinion on specific characters and personal interests, so feel free to drop your own ranking in the comments below. Alright, before I get to ranking jobs in these fictional worlds instead of trying to find one in real life, let's check out some featured Kustopia fan art. Now, if you haven't seen my last Deltarune video, I'm a Kris x Berdly shipper, so of course today's featured fan art is all Curdly themed. We've got an amazing piece of fan art from my festival bit featuring good old Togore Dreemurr, some art of Kris wearing Skechers because why not, and while it technically isn't fan art, someone drew an entire comic on Twitter that was inspired by my festival bit, which is just amazing. Anyways, thank you all for fueling the Curdly agenda, and let's get back to Employment Rune. Starting off with the classic, the powerful, the fat. Oh, Kingy Wingy. Out of every boss I'm gonna talk about, he's certainly one of them. While he does claim to care for his people, he isn't against throwing them in his cold, gloomy dungeon of despair. I mean, hell, he threw a guy in there for making a puzzle without a license. Imagine creating a masterful puzzle that only the best can solve in order to stop the Lightners, but you end up getting thrown in prison just because you don't have a license. And if the Fun Gang shows all the Darkners under King just a little bit of kindness, they don't hesitate to overthrow him, meaning that he was most likely a pretty crappy boss. When it comes to the work you'll be doing, there isn't exactly much. Like I said earlier, you can't create any cool puzzles because all the puzzle making's been delegated to that guy. I mean, you can go out and patrol for Lighteners, help run bake sales, and take care of Lancer. And I know a lot of you will jump at the opportunity to take care of that little bouncy blue pumpkin, but I don't know how much fanning and splat MP3s I could take. But being a father would be pretty cool, I guess. Speaking of Lancer, I feel like your coworkers would be fine. Rudins, Hathies, Jigsaris, and all that aren't awful, but I feel like they'll just be average. They do remember birthdays though, which is pretty nice. And maybe if I was having a bad day, I'd hang out with the Pawn Men, because they seem pretty chill. Clover seems to also work for King and would also just be a fine coworker. At least her parties would be fun, and I think talking to three heads would be entertaining. And of course, we have to talk about Rule's card. I know he's a bit of an acquired taste, but maybe if you get friendly with him, he'll allow you to make puzzles. Maybe he'd even refer to you as his apprentice, which I know at least a couple of you would like. Now lastly, we're gonna have to talk about the environment. The Card Kingdom isn't the most dangerous Dark World to work in, but it does have issues. I don't know if the Starwalker Bird or the Scissor Dancers will go after you if you're a Darkner working for King, but they'd certainly be a pain to avoid while you're patrolling. The Great Board would also be rough to deal with. It would suck trying to get back to the castle after a long day of patrolling, and you'll have to constantly deal with being sent all the way to the start of the board just because you weren't fast enough. Another pain in the ass would be the Forest Labyrinth. I would not want to deal with all that path crap after a hard day's work. And without Lancer and Susie showing you the wrong ways to go, it'd be annoying trying to get it down. But even with all those negatives, the trees around the Card Castle have candy growing on them, so that's fun. When it comes to where you'll stay, the king does allow some of his subjects to live in the Card Castle, each with their own specialized rooms, and even a shop where you can buy Rules' stuff, so upkeep is most likely not too much of an issue. Overall, despite some dangers and a mean boss, working under King wouldn't be the worst. Yeah, the work is mostly boring and the coworkers are average, but King does canonically pay his subjects, which is pretty sweet. Queen is an interesting boss to have. She's certainly the funniest out of every boss, but she's also the most unpredictable, which is a crazy thing to say considering Tenna's on this list. One second, she'll be driving in her car right after a glass of battery acid, and the next, everything around her just explodes. Every day under her might be insane and dangerous, but you'll never get bored. Man, this job sucks. Why are we even clearing out the street in the first place? What, is Queen planning some kind of parade or something? Oh my. But despite how fun and interesting it'd be to work under Queen, she's also terrifying. While I don't think she's ever followed through with her threats of turning faces into robot ones, she does like to use those wires to control Plug Boys and Berdly. I feel like if you wanted to avoid getting your face plugged in, you should just do your best to cooperate and be a good worker. I mean, she hasn't used any mind control on the Swatchlings or the tasks, and even Ralsei was treated kindly after being employed by Queen. She even gave him a really nice suit, which means that while you're working for her, you'll get access to some pretty sweet clothes. And out of all the bosses on this list, I feel like you'll be interacting with her the least, since she's always out and about. The work you'll have to do for Queen is a bit of a mixed bag. There's a lot of things that Queen makes you do that are just completely random, but there's also some standard jobs as well. You'll certainly have to do a lot of cleaning considering all of Queen's explosion gags, cleaning up task paw prints on the ground isn't awful, and serving food to Queen's guests is fine. Now while there are some easy jobs, there's also a lot of tough ones. For one, minding the pottery is a bit rough, considering it's practically everywhere, and facing the wrath of extremely muscular bird people in color-changing suits would not be good for your health. Dealing with mice is also going to be an issue. While Task Manager and her tasks can take care of them, they can't be everywhere at once, and if the mice do appear, the Swatchlings aren't going to be much help. I don't want to confront a group of mice and suddenly they turn into a 4x4 mouse stack called Mousepad or something, and then chase me around the mansion. There would be no chance I uphold the pottery rule if that happened. But I think the biggest issue you'd have to face in the Queen's Mansion would be working in the Lake of Acid. Because it's, well, acid. Not only that, but you can straight up just be left behind there. That Swatchling was so thankful for being rescued that it allowed you to break the pottery. Now we have to get into the environment of where you'll be working, and I'm gonna be honest. Queen has the most dangerous environments to work in. Queen herself says how dangerous the city is, and yeah, it most certainly is. You can try and just work specifically in the mansion to avoid the dangers of the city, but working there is just as dangerous. You need to deal with a crap ton of cars, weird salesmen trying to get into the mansion, angry mice, dogs under the table that ram into you at 60 miles an hour, and you know the entire mansion probably smells like battery acid, which is just gross. Comment below if you like the smell of battery acid, by the way. But despite all the dangers, Queen's mansion does have some pretty cool stuff. The decor and overall aesthetic of the mansion is pretty sweet, the color cafe looks amazing, and no, I'm not saying that just because it has a bunch of buff birds. The food they provide seems pretty nice, and the most important thing of all, due to the dark world itself, the mansion most likely has internet. I know all of us can't live without the internet, and having a place to watch Dark World YouTube or go to Dark World Twitter during a break would be the dream. Makes me wonder what Dark World Kustopia would be like. You can also just type stuff on the big computers and you'll gain it physically, with your room being fully customized depending on your browser history. Oh no. Now I don't know if those amenities are for the Queen's staff to use, but with how many doors there are, there's a chance that all the workers have their own rooms too. Finally, let's go over your coworkers, and honestly, I think Queen's staff are the best coworkers to have out of all of them. I mean, look how supportive they are of Ralsei in his little suit. They seem like they'd genuinely be good coworkers in non-mouse situations. Just don't disrespect the pottery. Swatch himself seems like a very cordial and professional person. Task Manager could train you into becoming a proper butler or maid, and also Newbert's there. And come on, you guys are Deltarune fans. I know a lot of you are very interested in Swatch and Task Manager, so there's always that too. Overall, while Queen herself is a wildcard of an employer and everything around could kill you, the coworkers seem kind and the work you'll be doing will never leave you bored. Also internet. Oh, Tenna. The beautiful, mentally unwell man you are. Now to give credit where credit's due, I think the TV world is environmentally the best out of the 4 Dark Worlds when it comes to working there. The different sets are all amazing and look like they'd be a lot of fun to take part in, but I think the shining star of it all is the green room. There's just so much you can do in it, and it looks absolutely swanky. The only problem is that all the fun stuff we see Tenna's employees do is after they start to rebel against him. So during work hours, I'm not sure how much freedom they actually get. When it comes to the work you'll be doing, there's actually a lot. You can shoot contestants from trees, get delicious food hurled into your mouth, get your picture taken, act, and my personal favorite, beating the absolute crap out of Tenna. And even when you're not on set, you can chill in the green room, play some video games, and hang out by the water cooler. But despite all this fun stuff you can do, there's also a chance you'll get stuck doing virtual paperwork in a virtual office, which from the looks of all these shadow guys, seems draining. While the work for Tenna seems a lot less dangerous than working for someone like Queen, there also seems to be a lot less freedom. Your coworkers, despite not being as good as Queen's staff, are all pretty solid. While the Pippins seem kinda sassy, they and the Shadow Guys seem to know how to have a good time, with all their looting and dancing during the Great Tenna Rebellion. The only problem is trying to understand them. Hey, what are you Shadow Guys up to? I also feel like Ram would be a neat coworker to have as well, but it does suck that everyone's mean to him. The Zappers are pretty cool, and El Niño and La Niño aren't horrible. I would just hate to be caught in between their breakup. Speaking of breakup, now Tenna for the most part seems like a decent boss. I mean, he doesn't seem too mad that his employees are beating the crap out of either a statue of him or just him painted gold. But as he begins to go crazy, that crappy boss side of him really starts to come out. All of his employees are contractually obligated to fight for him and do his bidding no matter what. Which, I'm not sure how powerful a contract is in the Dark World. I'm not really sure if you can Dark World sue someone and take them to Dark World court. Tenna's employees must have figured that out too, because they really don't seem to like him. They disobey and try to escape at any chance they get, and they just party when he starts to go off the deep end. Oh yeah, and they also loot. While you do get paid in points, Tenna must be a really crappy boss to warrant this much backlash from his staff. And honestly, from what we've seen, I really don't blame them. Tenna is, of course, very mentally unstable and can go off the deep end pretty quickly, which seems to be not only caused by abandonment, but from his very bitter breakup with Mr. Spamton G. Spamton. I've seen quite a few comics where Tenna gets drunk and extremely depressed over his ex, and judging from how not over it Tenna is, I can very well see it being canon. Yes, Tenna, I'm really sorry about what happened between you and your ex, but I haven't been paid in 5 months and I'd really like to talk about that. I'm gonna be so real, if I got lost in the sauce with Tenna and he'd start complaining about his ex, I would shut up and listen the entire time. Now, despite how mentally unstable Tenna can be, I'd honestly still put him around the same level as King and Queen. He may throw some people in the dungeon and fire them, but from what I've seen, he doesn't actually physically hurt anyone. He didn't even do anything after a bunch of Pippins robbed him. So yeah, despite being a lunatic, working for Tenna wouldn't be that bad. Now, when it comes to Old Man Gerson, he might be the best boss out of all of them, which really isn't saying much considering they're all insane. But working for Gerson would definitely be the simplest in terms of what you'll have to do, because you'll either just study, dust shelves and books, and rearrange things. It's essentially just working at a massive library, and unlike the other bosses, you don't really have to go anywhere while you work. You don't need to patrol an area or clean up someone's mess. You can just stay in the library and avoid the dangers that the Church Dark World has to offer. While I will definitely find the work boring, the study and library seem really cozy and peaceful. I can definitely see myself sitting down by the fire and reading something after I finish dusting. But I do wish there was a nice place to sleep. Oh well, you can sleep on the shelves and use books as blankets, I guess. Now, of course, the best thing about working for Gerson is Gerson. Having an old, wise mentor as your employer who teaches you how to be a better, stronger person would be amazing. If I worked under Gerson, I could definitely see him asking me to read to him, in order to teach me how to become better at recording scripts. And while having a wise old mentor would be awesome, your coworkers wouldn't be the greatest. While Jackenstein is always a delight, he's the only one I could really interact with, since the other options are, well... Hey Gue, how are you doing today?
Kustopia.
What? But despite the coworkers being hard carried by Jackenstein and the work being a bit monotonous, the environment and Gerson himself would more than make up for it. I couldn't see myself working there for long, but I'd definitely keep in touch with Gerson. Well, employment scaling was a lot of fun. And if I had to give my final ranking, it would be King, Tenna, Gerson, and Queen. I know I gave Gerson a higher rank than Queen, but I'm gonna be honest. Despite how dangerous working for the Queen would be, I need me that internet. Make sure to comment below what your ranking would be. But that's all for today's video, and I will see you all in the next. Alrighty, this video was honestly a long time coming. Flirting and dating has been a big Toby Fox staple for more than a decade, so at some point, I was gonna make a Deltarune dating video. I already made an Undertale one, so I might as well keep going. But unlike my video from 2 years ago, Jesus. Today, I'm really gonna go to town by going over every single adult Deltarune character and ranking them on whether or not I date them. I'll also obviously be excluding the characters that are implied to be underaged because I am an adult man and I do not need the Kustopia allegations to become real. Now, each of the tiers are pretty self-explanatory. No Way Jose is a hard no. I'll give it a shot are characters that aren't really what I'd see in a partner, but dating them could be interesting, so I'll give them a chance. I Can Work With This are characters that although aren't amazing, I can see a good relationship with them. And the other two are basically yes and hard yes. And when characters are on the same tier, the leftmost ones are the highest on that specific tier. Now, I'll be going through most of them pretty fast because there are a lot of characters. And if you disagree with me or want to create your own list, go right ahead. Also, please subscribe because I'm almost at 20k. If you do, I'll give you this little guy. Actually, I don't think one's enough. Okay, here. You can take 3. You get 3 little guys if you subscribe, so please do. Without further ado, get ready to listen to a man who thought he was Arrow Ace for years and who's never been on a date before talk about fictional characters' dateability. Let's get relationship scaling. Now, Toriel, for the most part, is pretty solid. I know she's been getting a lot of flack for how she was acting at the end of Chapter 4, and I do get it. But she's overall a genuinely sweet character who mixes kindness and humor really well. Baking with her would be a lot of fun, and getting wine drunk with her would be a great time. I think the one big issue she has is one that's out of her control. Asgore is still very obsessed with her, and has, in some cases, stalked her. And judging from the prophecy, he'll most likely crash out after learning what happened between Sans and Toriel. I do not want to deal with him while dating her, because I don't care how strong humans are supposed to be physically compared to monsters. Susie, a teenage girl, was able to lift a human up with one arm. And look how big Asgore is compared to her. Look at those arms. He would break me in half and use me to fertilize his flowers. Also, despite her kindness, she does seem to be unaware of certain things going on around her. She didn't seem to understand Kris's intentions with their horn headband. She didn't call to check on Kris or Susie even after it was past midnight. And does she not see the blood on the ground? But despite the big, strong goat man watching us, I still think Toriel would be a pleasure, so I can work with this. Now, just because I was gassing up Toriel doesn't mean I dislike Asgore. I think he'd be a pretty cool guy to date. I mean, running a flower shop is pretty sweet. And when he isn't acting sad and weird about Toriel, he's actually a pretty chill guy. And that is most definitely his biggest flaw. He just can't let go of the past, and that caused him to stop taking care of himself and his space. With him being desperate to show Toriel and the people of Hometown what really happened with Des. And while he is taking the divorce pretty hard, I'll still do my best to help him out. He's also kinda fat, which is a great bonus. Sans isn't too bad. He's a business owner, he has a sense of humor, and best of all, a neon light sign of himself. That's class. Let me just... Alright. The cat dad, despite only having one arm, seems to be a very joyful and happy guy. But from the way he talks in dialogue, he does seem to have maybe a couple of screws loose. Because how does he get the name Doug from Azrael? Oh well. Besides that, he obviously has some cat-like traits. He can't eat oranges, he's scared of pickles, and he gets stuck in trees. So that does seem like a bit of a hassle if you want to date him. And while he does seem to be very kind, I don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. Imagine trying to get him to take a bath. Still, I'd be happy to at least try. In the hypothetical scenario where he's single and not happily married with a family. Also, he's fat. The cat mom, although having some weird Marge Simpson thing going on, also seems like she'd be a pleasure to be around. She's happy, joyous, and extremely supportive. Although the hair is a little weird, I'd still like to date her. Even if I do have to help her out of a tree sometimes. And even then, she'll be supportive of me trying to get her down. Bratty's not for me. I know it's kinda weird that I like Catty and not Bratty, but Bratty seems like a genuinely unpleasant person. Her dialogue with Kris makes it seem like she took advantage of them wanting to hang out with the older kids. And from the dialogue choices, it seems like Kris genuinely doesn't like her. Bratty also screwed over Pizza Pants, which is really crappy. So here's to the first hard pass on the list. Choosing where Alphys goes on this list is a little tricky for me. For one, an anime watching lizard woman that also plays video games is pretty awesome. But on the other hand, she's super self-deprecating and is honestly pretty sad. She hardly has any friends, and she writes anime reviews for teenagers, but I still think me and her would get along, and encouraging her to put herself out there would be nice. A little issue I do have with Alphys is that Kris genuinely does not seem to like her, but since we don't really know, I won't count it against her. Also, putting her in a decent tier would piss off one of my friends, so I'll do it. To put it simply, Undyne is kind of a lunatic, but in a fun way. Yeah, she's really intense and has a scary amount of strength, but she's also really supportive, shown with how she's trying to get Alphys to make more friends. And while it might seem scary dating someone who could throw you like a football, I'll do it. Hell, that football thing kinda convinced me even more. Now we get to the Darkners, and Rudin is a very weak starting point. Rudins are known to be pretty greedy, but will tend to be loyal to the people that pay them, which makes me worried that if someone else with more money comes around, they'll drop me in an instant. Now, am I generalizing all Rudins? Maybe. Am I being Darksist? Now let's not add fire to the Kustopia allegations. But despite their greed, they do seem to back people up who are nice to them, and they all seem decently pleasant. But overall, they're not for me. Now we're talking. Hathy is said to have a big heart and can read people's emotions, and we do love a socially aware queen. It also loves to flirt and show love to others, which is just perfect. So overall, yeah, I'd date it. I'm not personally a fan of Jigsaw. While I too am kind of over-emotional sometimes, crazy I know, I don't think I can have a serious conversation with them due to how sensitive they are. I'm sorry, but I'll have to pass. Please don't cry. Top Chef is a character that I just feel bad for. Dude genuinely cannot catch a break, but he does give the fun gang a cake every day, which is pretty awesome. So while I will get fat, I'd still be down to date him. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about going on a date with K-Round, because I have no clue how sentient they are. It never talks, it just has amazing legs and bows really well. So because of that ambiguity, I'll have to pass. The Kris, Suzy, Ralsei, and TP Masters are all gonna go around the same spot. They were all once puzzle makers, so that's a positive, I guess. But other than that, there's not much to say. Maybe if I date one of them, they'll become a Kustopia master. Actually, I don't really like the sound of that. But you'll begin to notice that I'm gonna go through these characters faster, because I completely forgot I was supposed to go through them quickly. From what I've seen of Joe, he doesn't seem that bad. Sure, he's kind of a bum and has $1 to his name, but he seems helpful. I wouldn't mind dating him, I guess. Sham is another tricky character to rank. They seem like they'd be good company, and while I'm not a fan of how cynical they are, I get it. Even though I'm not too big on their personality, it's not a deal breaker, and I think Sham is pretty cute, so why not give it a shot? Pawnmen are said to be simple beings with no will of their own, so while they do look cute, I don't think I'd want to date them. But I do respect them going one square at a time. Honestly, Mr. Society is something. Despite being a bit brash, he does acknowledge his uselessness when it came to stopping King, which is something, I guess. But him wanting to isolate himself from society is kind of a deal breaker. As much as I like spending time with a partner, I'd love to see other people too. But who knows? Mr. Elegance said he might return, so maybe Mr. Society will change. But for now, I'll pass. Weirdly enough, I'd be down to date Mr. Elegance. He's a pretty nice fella and he's always down to help people, so why not? And believe it or not, this won't be the craziest character I put in the top 2 tiers. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pass on Rabbik. I just think they look too much like a regular animal. They'd be more like a pet to me. When it comes to Bloxer, I can literally fix them, but working hard and training with them would be a delight. So yeah, I'd date them. Now, I talked about Clover in my Deltarune employment video, saying how hanging out with her could be cool because talking to 3 heads would be interesting, but having to deal with her in a relationship would be rough. Don't get me wrong, I love a woman with 3 heads, but I'd feel bad for the one head that doesn't agree with the other 2. Because the 3 heads disagree, deciding on stuff would be rough. But if I really put the effort in, I think I could make it work. Also, 2 of them like fluffy boys with glasses, and I'm 2 of those things, so I'll give it a shot. You know how I said you could fix Bloxer? Well, Melius could fix you. Hell yeah. Now, if this was chapters 1 and 2, I wouldn't put Starwalker on my date list, but after chapter 3, we learn that it's apparently a skilled lover by instantly pulling El Niño and La Niño, so yeah, sure. The evil, fake Starwalker will not be getting any sympathy from me. I don't care if it can fly, the original Starwalker might grow wings too. Now, if you're asking, Kus, are you seriously considering dating a coat rack? No, I'm considering dating a royal coat rack. I may not wear a hat, but with it around, I might start. Yeah, sure, I'll date the ball. It doesn't think highly of itself, so I'd love to help it gain confidence, and it's beautiful the way it grows throughout the chapters with the help of its friends. They talk in a funny way, and that's about it. I'm okay. I'll let it eat my clothes. Such is the way of the worm. They also don't understand taxes, and honestly, me too, buddy. The block trees on this tier list? What can I even say about it? You know what? Sure. Would I want to dance with it? Yeah. Would a wrong move cause me to get a limb sliced off? Probably, but that sounds like a blast, so why not? Yes, I'll date him if the tree comes with him. Imagine ordering at a fast food place and going up to the cashier and saying, he asked for no pickles, and it's just a giant red tree. That'd be awesome. But overall, the Forgotten Man seems friendly enough, so why not? I hope I'll remember him. Rudin Rangers seem decently loyal to people kind of them, and it said they're obsessed with ranger shows, so I'll do it. Head Happy focuses more on its job than emotions, and honestly, kinda relatable, but we'll learn to balance work and love together. But I feel like I'll Susie it and flirt so badly that it leaves the room. You know what the best part about rules is? I'll be able to date anybody else on this tier list and he'll come with them. But despite how annoying and controlling rules can be, I think I can work with him. Also, he's canonically hot, and because weirdness doesn't really bother me, that's nothing but a bonus. I'd love to watch his stupid antics and support him from the sidelines. Also, he might even give you some rules cards, so that's cool. Those eyes are staring into my soul. Yeah, I can work with this. No, on the fact that they're just animals. But what's interesting is that these are one of the only Darkners that are based on food. I'm afraid I just might eat them. The trash can Rudin can be a bit of a jerk, but he seems pretty happy for being in a trash can. At least I know it'll appreciate where I take it. All three kings don't really do much, but the diamond one really likes to be an animal, so I'll just leave them down there. You know what? Sure, I guess I could rules card 2 lion cage creatures. I can't believe that one Jigsari who was arrested for unlicensed puzzle making's on this list. Honestly, he tried to fight the power. That's respectable. Yeah, no. Look, I can handle a bit of crazy, but Jevil is next level. I'm sure he'd be a blast to be around, but it gets to a point. While I do have a surprisingly large amount of King enjoyers in my audience, I don't think King would be amazing to date, but he's not a hard no. While he is a tyrannical lunatic who is willing to arrest people for the simplest of reasons, a lot of his evil did stem from the influence of the Dark Fountain and his anger towards Lightners. And after being defeated, he just becomes grouchy and kinda sad. And after what we've seen of him, I don't think he's the worst. So yeah, I'll give the tyrannical ruler a shot. Even though I'm not a religious man, I think Father Alvin would be pretty solid as a partner. He's genuinely kind, and his stress of living up to his father's legacy is super relatable. Having someone to help him through that would be nice. And yes, I would say bangin' sermon my man every time I go to church. Miss Boom seems really kind, and while she doesn't remember Berdly's name, she does remember the stuff he tells her, so that's cool. I love a listener. The only thing I do have a problem with is that she's really old. Older ladies are cool, but I draw the line at old ladies. Sorry. Why wouldn't I want to date a kind rabbit lady who brings me food? Man, she's kind of amazing. Blue Ears is sweet. He loves his job and his coworkers, and although he went along with Bratty's catfishing, he really didn't want to take part in it and just wanted to see Pizza Pants happy. So yeah, I'll date him. Speaking of Pizza Pants, I can see him being a friend, but I wouldn't want to date him. He's just too stressed and crazy for me personally. He does know old memes though, which is pretty awesome, but still, no thank you. While Aaron is a lot less buff than his Undertale counterpart, he dresses decently well, and him being supportive of his friend's gains is pretty cool too. While Glad Dragon is already married and has kids, he does seem to go through great lengths to make them happy, so that's commendable. The Hat Monster's hat, although really cool, kind of intimidates me, but he can store stuff in it, which is pretty awesome. He can help hold stuff for me. While Ficus Liquor isn't too horrible, they couldn't bring themselves to tell Caddy that they thought the diner was the post office and has just been stalling for hours and not ordering anything. Dude, at least get a drink or something. Even though they couldn't speak up about something so minuscule, I think I'd still give it a shot. The Fire Girl's cute, and although she would burn me if I was remotely close to her, we could find a way to make it work. Even though the Tentacle Girl was a bad student and a rebel, she seems to have a good heart, so why not? A big, muscular wolf who hates ice? Okay. They also seem to work for the mayor, so you'll know you have a partner with a good job. Yeah, they're cute, but that's about it. Although I don't know how to make mineral water without the water, I think I could figure it out. Also, telling people that you're dating the shambling mass would be kind of awesome. She's cute and a hard worker. Even though we don't know much about her, all that we do know is pretty good. Yeah, no. One of the only things we know about the Red Big Mouth is that they went against the Geneva Convention, which is crazy. They also work in the medical field, which is pretty commendable. Is Shiren just a floating head? Yeah, probably. But she's really cute and has a beautiful voice, so why not? Despite the Wet-Nosed Bandits being a gang of criminals, they all seem like pretty nice people. But I think they're all a little too dog-like for me though, so I don't want to date any of them. Napstablook's still the sad, shy ghost we all know and love, and while he is really sad, I wouldn't mind going on a date with him. Making music is a pretty cool hobby, and lying on the floor and feeling like trash is actually kinda therapeutic. I genuinely fear the warrior, and as cool as they are, I don't think I could keep up with their lust for battle, which is a shame. Now I know I said before that I would date two Sams. I could not in good faith date either of the royal guards because they're so happy together. Even if we were in a throuple, I couldn't do it. Yeah, you can call me Darksist all you want, but I just can't. The purple guy is the most employed, unemployed character in the game. Despite working all over town, he never actually applied for a job anywhere. He just works for the love of the game, and honestly, mad respect. I'd love to date someone who's hardworking. I may be willing to date a lot of different things, but a small, sleazy green homunculus is gonna be off the table. While I have nothing against the hand receptionist, I'd rather not date her since I've been playing a lot of Elden Ring and those giant hands have angered me in ways they shouldn't. I'll reconsider when I stop suffering from post-traumatic hand disorder. The Politics Bear is definitely a character. I guess their revelation that their political position is complete bogus is kinda neat, but we know practically nothing about this character. I'll still give dating them a shot though. Let me just clear this up now so I don't have to later. I am not a furry, I swear. The Milk Looker, despite having an S-tier hobby, actually reminds me of a friend I have, and because of that, I don't think I can date them. Also, they called Kris's family freaks, which, while maybe a little accurate, wasn't cool. Onion, Azrael 2, or whatever you want to call them, is a hard pass from me. They genuinely freak me out, so I'm good. I am perfectly okay not dating the Homestuck creature. I mean, what can I even say about the Clam guy? Sure, he looks cool, why not? A lot of these hometown NPCs are gonna be sure why not because we know so little about them that there aren't many deal breakers for me. But this is one of the deal breakers. Sorry, I don't want to date a frog. It's cute and has a love for flowers, sure. She needs someone to whip her back into shape. I got this. She's a woman who dislikes libraries and thinks newspapers are better, which is a little weird, but whatever, to each their own. I don't go to libraries anyways. Scarf Mouse was always an interesting character to me, due to the fact that they were Kris and Noelle's childhood babysitter, and the fact that they can take care of kids is pretty cool. Despite how loud he is, Noe's dad seems decent enough. Even after his wife's death, he still tries his best to look after his kid. And you know what? Why not try and date a single father? Terry's just a cool guy. Maybe even too cool for me, but hey, maybe he'd be cool enough to date me. While Donut Guy does seem cowardly, his fear was directed towards Undyne bench pressing a car, so I'm not gonna hold it against him. But anyone who can drive is a win in my book. If he can give me a ride, then maybe I won't accidentally drive in the opposite direction of a roundabout. While the snail guy can drive, it would probably be faster if I just walked everywhere. And even though he seems chill, by the time we go out to do stuff together, everything would be closed because he genuinely likes to go slow. Rudy would honestly be a pretty cool guy to date. He's nice, not afraid to joke around, and he's genuinely supportive of his daughter. I think the only thing wrong with him is the fact that he's dying, but other than that, yeah, I'd love to go on a date with him. Carol Holiday is certainly something. I really wanted to put her higher because of what Asgore said about Carol being lovely once you get to know her. But from what we've seen so far, she's just cold and strict. But the fact she has a katana on her wall and likes to collect little Santa toys makes me pray that there's a nicer side to her. That hope is what makes me want to give dating her a shot. I would most definitely date Queen. Now, I did say before that I couldn't handle a lot of crazy, but with Queen, I'd make an exception. Because despite how dangerous and unpredictable her lunacy is, she's actually pretty sweet sometimes. So hey, even though I'll most definitely die while dating her, those 3 hours I'm alive will be amazing. And if she decides to go on a date with me while she's in the giant robot, then that would be the best thing ever. Alright, let's rapid fire through these plug boys. Regular plug boy? Sure, whatever, there's nothing wrong with them. Bandana plug boy is kinda cooler, wanting to rebel against the queen despite not having any notable skills, but still, the thought counts. Eyelashes plug boy is fine and loves digital cats. Cool. Fedora plug boy gets a hard pass and suit plug boy is fine. They just look cooler than the others. Now, I'm a bit confused about werewires, because I know that some are being mind controlled by Queen, but others just go around daily life just fine. But since there are some sentient werewires that seem chill, I'll give them a shot. Task is a little too cat-like for my taste, so no thank you. Now this is the perfect amount of cat. Having someone to whip me into shape would be perfect, because even though I do work hard a lot of the time, I can be pretty lazy sometimes. I really gotta change some habits around, but yeah, dating her sounds great. And if you're gonna bring up the electric whip, don't worry. I can tank it. Come on, let's be real here. I think the only problem I have with Newbert is that I'd feel like he's too good for me and I fear that I'm holding him back, but I'm sure I'll work through those insecurities with him. The hacker is fine. They dress pretty sharp and are physically pretty sharp as well, and despite kind of being a fraud, I wouldn't mind dating them. Despite being a criminal, Viro-Kun is described as a virus with a heart of gold, so I think dating it would be a good time. It was also nice enough to teach Noelle how to battle, so you know what? Let's do it. Although ambulances can be aggressive, they seem pretty sweet to people nice to them, but they did talk shit about Susie's healing. Dude, she's learning, just give her some time. I like all 3 members of Sweet Cap'n Cakes. They're pretty cool dudes. They played music they thought Noelle would like, and they really do come in clutch at the end. Also, their ride is pretty sick. If I had to pick the best though, it'd be KK. He has one of my favorite designs in the whole game. It's just a guy who likes to spin. Not really sure what we'd do for a date. I don't know, maybe we could spin together. Nope, get it out of here. Pop-Up is said to be attention-starved, shriveling up if ignored. Sorry Pop-Up, but I can't click on those ads for you. Despite how happy and upbeat they are, they did kinda act bitterly when Spamton started gaining success, leaving him behind. And I don't think I can date someone who keeps trying to sell stuff all the time. I don't know if any of you have seen the show Community, but there's an episode about that. If you know, you know. That is a mouse. I am not going to date it. That is just a wheel of mice. No. Now we're talking. Of course I'm going to date the sentient car. That's like one step away from dating a transformer. The Icon Man, despite how sad he looks, is just trying to help his friend deal with existential dread, which is pretty sweet. Maybe he could help with my insecurities too. As for his friend, maybe we can deal with our existential dread together. Okay, now that's just a mouse in a wig. I don't care if it's sentient, I am not going to date a mouse. Are you seriously gonna ask me if I want to date a large buff bird creature that loves to clean and take care of people? Come on now. Obviously, I'd love to date Swatch. He's super kind and respectful, and I think the very act of dating him means the Swatchlings come with him. Dating someone that comes with their very own workforce would be awesome. It's like having kids, but better. I'm gonna have to say no to the yes man. I need someone to call me out on my crap sometimes, and I don't think Yes Man's gonna be the person to do it. Sorry, but the only robot characters I'd like to date are the ones that would just kill me. Why are these floating saucers that fire projectiles at you even on this tier list? What would I even do with them romantically? Okay, I'll try it out. Since we don't know too much about Friend, I don't want to add them to this list, so I'll just, erase them from existence. Alright, I know a lot of people are gonna be split on this one, but I do not want to date Spamton. He's an awesome character and I really like him, but I would never want to date the guy. I don't know if people forget this, but he's a mentally unstable homeless man. Actually, knowing the Deltarune fanbase, those are all positives, aren't they? But I feel like Spamton's definitely the guy to either make you pay for the bill, or just straight up run out of the restaurant. I know a lot of people like crazies, but that's just too much crazy for the K-Train. If you've watched my previous videos, you know that I've got a lot to say about Mr. Anthony Tenna, cause that man's got baggage. Not only is he dealing with an extremely bitter breakup, but he's also got a lot of self-worth problems and abandonment issues, with said issues making his mental state incredibly fragile. But despite all that, I genuinely do think he'd be good to date. With all the planning he has to do for his show, I feel like Tenna would be really good at setting up elaborate dates. Also, unlike Spamton, Tenna hasn't become a bum. He's still a sharply dressed and charismatic guy. And despite having a lot of problems, Susie was able to reassure Tenna that there was someone out there for him. And you know what? Maybe it's me. Despite the mood swings and baggage, I can work with this. While I still don't want to date a garbage can, I can respect serious trashy a lot more than regular trashy. Now, despite not being able to talk, a shadow guy would be a pretty interesting partner. They can serenade you with their sweet tunes and seem to love fun, but general communication with them would be rough. Maybe I can learn how to speak. Who knows? Now, there are a vast array of Pippins in the game, but from what we've seen, a lot of them do like to break the rules. They also love to loot, which is pretty crazy. I don't know if I could have anything serious with the Pippins, but it'd sure be fun. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on the weird frog thing that lives in the garbage. Shocking, I know. While Zappers are said to love brute force and seem kinda rough, a lot of the Zappers we've seen in-game are actually pretty chill. Just keep away from their volume button and I'm sure you'll have some good dates. Honestly, I'm surprised how much I relate to Shutta. A Darkner who's sentimental of the past and loves to take photos? Sign me up. I'm sure it'll make a lot of awesome, photographed memories. Now you might be asking, Kus, are you seriously considering dating a large sentient couch? And I have to say yes, it looks very comfortable. Despite its intense power, I think I could date the water cooler. I think the only problem I'd have with it is that if I date it, it'll make the cactus sad. Yeah, sure, I'll give the British plug a chance. Despite the fact that almost nobody likes him, he seems like a polite guy with a sense of humor, albeit with a little bit of self-worth issues. And like me, he likes to reminisce about the good old days. I can't really see a reason not to date him, so yeah, I can work with this. Now here we are with another duo of characters that I feel like separating would be wrong. I don't think I could even throttle it up, because despite Rules' antics being kinda funny, it did kind of suck how uncomfortable El Niño and La Niña were during the whole thing. Because not only am I not hot, but I'm also weird, and I can't really share the sky with them. Unless of course, I become a big YouTuber. Subscribe so I can become a throuple with two fictional characters. Sure. Why not date a magical piece of clothing? I mean, look at this list. I've said yes to worse. Even if I do get swooned, I'm not gonna go for the Roaring Knight, because dating some powerful entity that wants to destroy the world seems like it'd be pretty rough. I don't think any of us could fix them, and I'm worried that the Roaring Knight might be Des Holliday's corpse or something, and I would not want to add more fire to the Kustopia allegations. Call me crazy, but I would not want to date Gerson. I'm just not into old people, and I know the saying, just because the wrapper's wrinkled doesn't mean the candy isn't sweet, but like I said, it's just not for me. I'd love for him to be my friend or mentor, but I couldn't date him. In my opinion, I feel like when it comes to the Cuptons, you'd have to date all of them instead of just one of them. And honestly, I'm down to do it. They would definitely call me my liege, and that would be amazing. Now you could bring up the fact that they're more like servants than romantic partners, but I would treat all of them with love and respect. I wouldn't be opposed to dating a ghost that works hard and studies. And even though we'd have a very distinct language barrier, I'd be down to learn Mandarin, so why the heck not? Honestly, I forgot these guys are food-based darkners too, but a calm, studious partner would be nice. I'd study our ancestors with them. Oh, yeah, I forgot this guy was a character. No thank you. How could I not date the most important character in the game? A playful water princess that sleeps a lot and sings? Honestly, sounds good to me. It said that Balthazar's an aeromancer. Hey, that's what I thought I was. I feel like this easygoing metal turtle would be a good partner. With Miss Mizzle's standards and how she cherishes love, I would probably fumble. She's not a water princess, she's a water queen, but I will try my absolute best. Despite looking awesome, I think organic is a bit too creepy for me. Sorry to that one person in my comments who loves organic. While I do love reading, dating an old man who loves to mumble is not for me. The wizard outfit is pretty awesome though. Yes, it's a flying sword, of course I'm going to date it. I slept with a replica of Cloud's Buster Sword before, I am going to date Wingblade. A chaotic metal witch as a life partner? Yes please. Alright listen, I love Jackenstein. He really grew on me over time, but I don't think I can date him. He's just too childlike in my opinion. I'd love to be his friend, but I couldn't imagine dating him. I know a lot of you would jump at the chance, but for me personally, I'm okay. It's good for decoration, but I wouldn't want to date it. But for real, this thing would look awesome in my house. Last, but certainly not least, we got the Mikes. Small Mike is really funny with his obsession, and you gotta admire his commitment to being Mike, so I'll give it a shot with him. I'll basically be dating a Deltarune fan. I would also date Cowboy Mike, because they're tall, strong, and relaxed. And I'll have to pass on Cat Mike, because from that new scene we got of the three of them, it seems really intent on being a cat, which, although is respectable, I don't want to date a cat that isn't beautiful and perfect. Well, there you have it. A massive tier list about which fictional characters I would and wouldn't date. After finishing the script and recording, I know this is gonna take forever to make, but I'll continue working hard. Leave a comment on the stuff you agree and disagree with, or even make your own list. I just picked up a random template online and you can do the same. Anyways, thank you all for watching, my name's Kustopia, and please don't think any differently of me just because I choose to date some cups. Now, I don't know if it's just a me thing, but ever since Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 came out, the memes in the fandom have become a lot funnier. Though maybe it's just because older memes get less funny as time goes on. This probably went hard as hell back in 2018. But the chapters 3 and 4 era has some pretty funny stuff. Kris automatically connecting to the bunker Wi-Fi was really good, and I swear Asgore hitting Des with his truck was funny 3 months ago. Not only have the memes become a lot funnier, but they've also become super popular. When I was hanging out with my extended family during the end of the summer, my little cousin started singing that Driving in My Car song, and I was like, dude, how do you know what that is? You're 9 years old. Undertale is older than you are. But out of every meme that spawned from chapters 3 and 4, I think the most popular, besides the truck, is most definitely Togore Dreemurr, the middle child of Asgore and Toriel Dreemurr. Now, I made a community post asking you guys what you thought of Togore, and the responses were actually pretty mixed. Like, some of you guys straight up despise him. But Togore Dreemurr was actually one of my favorite Deltarune memes that came out of chapters 3 and 4. And before I get actually'd in the comments, I know he's been around for a long time. It's just that he didn't get popular until last July. And when I say popular, I mean he got really popular, but I'll get more into that later. But it wasn't just Togore that I found myself liking. Chapters 3 and 4 spawned a vast array of characters that are said to have been in the game the entire time. Noelle's older brother Chester, her cousin Rory Knight, and all of Sans' weird brothers are awesome. And despite how absolutely rotted some of these characters ended up being, the fact that people are trying to convince the fandom that these little critters are all real is kinda hilarious to me. Now, I'm not really sure what to call these types of characters. I kinda wanted to call them Graggle-likes, named after the iconic Graggle Simpson, but that just didn't sound catchy enough. Some other names that I thought up for the genre as a whole were Gaslight Tale, Deltarune, and my personal favorite, Those Little Freaks. Now, a few of you guys have said the most popular name for these types of characters are fangoners, which works extremely well for a couple of reasons that I'll get into later. But if I had to pick a name for them, it would definitely be the extended family, because it seems like a staple that each of these little critters are in some way related to the main characters in Deltarune. And if you're asking, Kus, do you only like these guys because you're a little bit of a pathological liar? No. And if you're a Deltarune character that's been here the entire time, hit that subscribe button. I'll get into my reasons soon, so without further ado, let's gas the lights and dive into my favorite Delta freaks. Now, of course, I have to start the video off by talking about the golden boy of the Gaslight Rune community. Starting off as a little name joke in the fandom years ago. What if Asriel's name ended up being Togore? Well, the joke ended up evolving and created its very own little homunculus. First off, I genuinely adore Togore's design. I love his stupid giant eyes that just stare into your soul and his neutral expression. I also like that by looking at his design, you could obviously tell he's the Dreemurr's middle child. He wears Asriel's striped shirts, which are obvious hand-me-downs, and he also serves as the balance between Asriel and Kris, as while he is a monster like Asriel, he doesn't have the goat horns like Kris. Like I said earlier, the fact that the fandom kept trying to gaslight people into thinking Togore was real is super funny. And to explain why I think Togore's hilarious, I'll have to tell a little personal story. See, back in middle school, I had this friend named Tim, who was one of my closest friends and one of the main 7 in my group. He ended up leaving after 6th grade, and throughout middle and high school, our group just kept getting bigger and bigger with new people joining. And during the summer after high school graduation, we reunited with him, and he rejoined the group. And when we, the original 7, told our friends, they were like, who the hell is Tim? Because we hardly ever brought him up, and after thinking back on it, I realized that Tim was just straight up the Togore Dreemurr of our friend group. Oh, you don't know Tim? He was the secret member of the original friend group. He's been a staple character this whole time. It just sounds like we were trying to gaslight them. And all because of this, I realized that it wouldn't be the most outlandish thing in the world if Togore was actually real. Hey, we don't know everything about Kris's familial life, so who knows? They could have had a middle brother this whole time. Maybe he's just out camping or something, I don't know. But the thing that makes me love Togore Dreemurr the most is the fact that the Deltarune fandom straight up transformed him into an interesting and compelling character. So many people helped mold Togore in amazing ways. The comics about how he was originally reluctant to have Kris be a part of the Dreemurr family before warming up to them is adorable. And the ways creators have given him intricate relationships with his siblings, parents, and the holidays is genuinely compelling. The artist who made a comic of him being obsessed with looking for Death's holiday is actually genius. He was even given his very own iconic catchphrase. I don't care what anyone says, Togore-tastic is badass. I know a lot of people find Togore overused and annoying, and I do kinda get it, but the fact that the Deltarune fandom treated Togore with so much love and care that they turned him into an interesting character is just straight up beautiful. They also, of course, got him into Undertale's 10th anniversary stream. You know who didn't get into the stream? Me. But I'm not too bitter. Let's just say my Mettaton body pillow was given to charity. But yeah, while the whole silly gaslighting stuff was funny, the fact that Togore, this made-up joke character, became so amazing is honestly Togore-tastic. Now I can't talk about these strange under-Delta relatives without going over the eldest of them all, Pruncell. Pruncell, if you couldn't tell, is a massive floating eyeball and the brother of Sans. The best part about him is obviously the fact that he just came to someone in a dream, and judging from how incredibly creepy and ominous he is, there's a strong possibility he wasn't manifested by the human mind and instead infiltrated someone's head to invade our reality. The bottom line is that Pruncell is one creepy dude, but that's what makes him so cool. Sans' brother being this giant eye is hilarious to think about, and despite how terrifying he is, Sans just doesn't give a crap. The fact that he's also supposed to be the replacement for Papyrus and fills in for him in every scene is kinda awesome. Imagine going on a date with a giant eyeball. Where would that go in the Kustopia Undertale dating tier list? The answer is high.
But it would also be funny if it was Sans, his brother Papyrus, and their youngest brother Prancel, the massive eye who speaks in red glows. Overall, a phenomenal character. You gotta give your respect to the OG. Now, after Togore, the next Gaslight Rune character I encountered was Chester Holiday, who is, I'm pretty sure, the middle child of Rudy and Carol Holiday. Now, while I did like Togore a lot, the existence of Chester really got me into these meme characters. The creator of Chester also comments on some of my community posts. So if you're watching this, Raltsy, I don't know, I really like your character. Like Togore, Chester got a lot more characterization the more popular he got. He's this kind, goofy jock and the best friend of Togore, with the two of them quite possibly even being lovers. The art people make of the two of them is just straight up beautiful. Chester continues the trend of Dreemurrs and Holidays being connected to one another. His dynamic with his sisters and parents is also super cool to see, since he's more extroverted and happy compared to the shy Noelle and rebellious Des. He was also forgotten by the universe itself, acting as an outsider looking into a reality where he never existed, hence why I said earlier that the name Fangoners worked. Chester being forgotten by the universe is a super interesting concept, and it continues another trend of horrible crap happening in the holidays. But I think the funniest part about Chester is the fact that he was created to joke about the knight's identity. A majority of the fandom believes that the Roaring Knight is Des Holiday, and even more believe that it has to be someone in the Holiday family. Sorry, Papyrus Knight believers, stay strong. But Chester's existence is funny as hell, because yeah, the Roaring Knight could be Des, or Carol, or Rudy, but it could also be the Holiday's secret middle child, Chester. Always bet on Chester Knight, ladies and gentlemen. But maybe it isn't Chester. It could also be Noelle's cousin, Rory Knight. Actually, looking at him now, I don't really see it. I swear, there's even a character called Easter Holiday, who was Noelle's uncle or something, but I just can't find any evidence of his existence. I could have sworn I saw him on Twitter or something. Was it psychosis? Am I just insane from obsessing over these weird characters? I don't know. But Chester, despite not being as popular as Togore, is honestly a super cool character, and another example of these joke characters becoming something more. Raltsy even created cutscenes for him, and honestly, it makes Chester being the knight more believable. It's all very awesome. Alright, now I get to talk about the most rotted part of the Mandela Light Gastale genre. After Prancel, it took years before Sans and Papyrus ended up getting more siblings. The meme originally started when Sans called Papyrus's junior jumble a puzzle for baby bones, which was just his goofy Sans way of saying it was an easy puzzle for children. But then, Baby Bones became his very own character, being the youngest of the Skeleton brothers. Honestly, it was kinda clever, but it became rotted very fast. The fandom took the way Sans frequently uses the words "my brother" and ended up creating a vast assortment of siblings. How can we forget about Dirty Brother the Skeleton, who you kill during the genocide route? Or Has a Very Special Attack the Skeleton, or Real Star the Skeleton, or Pretty the Skeleton, or Cool the Skeleton, or started a sock collection recently the Skeleton. It's basically Kid Named Finger all over again. The names started off kinda clever, and ended up becoming stupid so fast, but honestly, I think it ended up becoming so stupid that it looped around to being funny for me. You could also argue this is more of an Undertale meme than a Deltarune one, since everything we've seen so far has been from Undertale, but it's not unreasonable to think that this meme started to really kick off because of how elusive Sans has been about his brother in Deltarune. We haven't seen Sans' brother throughout all 4 chapters, and who knows? There's an above 0% chance that this brother could be Prancel or Baby Bones. We have no way of knowing. I can be the very first person to say that started a sock collection recently the Skeleton could be the Roaring Knight. But despite none of these characters becoming as complex and interesting as the likes of Togore and Chester, the sheer mind-numbing stupidity of all of them made me start really liking them. Also, the thought of Sans and Papyrus's house being full of all these insane siblings is really funny to me. So, those were some of my favorite Delta Light under Gastale rune characters. I honestly have a few more I really want to talk about, like Relsay and the members of Lancer's family, but I'll save those guys for another video, since college is really starting to pick up and I've been working a lot more. At the end of the day, although it is fun trying to convince people that these critters are in the game, the fact that a lot of these characters have grown with the care of the fandom is really nice to think about. Anyways, thank you all for watching, my name's Kustopia, and remember, always bet on Chester Knight. Now, in college, I've got a lot of free time on my hands. And with that free time, I've started to get back into anime. Specifically, I've been watching clips from a bunch of different anime where the characters face off against a villain in a one-on-one fight. It's super entertaining to watch two characters square off against each other in single combat, using everything at their disposal to win. And while I was watching these clips, I got to thinking about the 1v1s in Deltarune. It's actually really interesting to think about the game's one-on-one fights, since the Delta Warriors fight as a team around 90% of the time. But after going through each solo fight, I realized something. Almost every 1v1 in Deltarune is absolute peak. The environments, stakes, and build-up to these fights are all incredible, and I've been itching to talk about them, so today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna talk about every one-on-one battle in Deltarune, and explain why I find each of them so amazing. I'll even give them a rating out of 10 at the end. And if you feel like Ralsei deserves his very own solo battle, hit that subscribe button. Maybe against Sans or something, I don't know. But now, let's hop into every one-on-one battle in Deltarune. Starting with... Suzy vs. Lancer is a one-on-one fight that I feel like is disgustingly underrated. Sure, it's not as visually incredible and action-packed as other fights in this list, but it's really, really good. I don't know how I forgot this, but Lancer is such an integral part of Deltarune. He was Suzy's first ever friend since she moved to hometown, and if it wasn't for Lancer, Suzy probably would have never softened up to Kris and Ralsei. Both were considered outcasts in their worlds, and Lancer was the only one who outwardly admired Suzy and loved to be around her. He truly was her little brother, which makes it all the more painful when he betrays Suzy and the Fun Gang, wanting to keep them in prison forever in fear of what they would do if they faced his father. When Suzy discovers Lancer's misguided betrayal, you understand his intentions, but unfortunately, she does not. All she knows is that her first friend in a long time betrayed her, and knowing how bad it was for her when she first moved to hometown, you really do understand her anger. But when Lancer refuses to move out of her way and their fight begins, it doesn't look like a hero of the prophecy facing off against a nefarious villain. It's a little kid facing off against a massive, enraged monster. Now, I wasn't rooting for Lancer, but I was rooting for him not to die. As if the fight wasn't already one-sided enough, you can see how out of it he is the entire time. Gone are the badass bike tricks, and what's left is a scared boy who doesn't want to fight his best friend. But Suzy did not care, laying into him over and over and over, with each strike dealing more and more damage. And what makes it even more painful is seeing Lancer's attacks get slower and shakier. Leave him alone, he's just a boy. But despite how angry she is, in the end, Suzy's the one who stops fighting, begging Lancer to just move. For the first time in the game, she doesn't want to fight. And in the end, Suzy assures Lancer that they'll try to talk things out peacefully with his father. So while the 1v1 isn't anything special visually, it marked the first massive shift in Suzy's development. Suzy vs. Lancer is, in my opinion, one of the most emotional fights in the series. God, I love Lancer. Big shot. I'm gonna be real. I completely forgot Kris had a one-on-one fight with base form Spamton, which is insane to say considering how iconic his introduction is. Me and my friends still go, "Hey Every, it's me," from time to time. Also, don't ask me why, but for some reason this scene of Spamton screaming, "Living in a goddamn garbage can," before punching it randomly pops into my head sometimes. But despite this beautiful introduction to one of Deltarune's most iconic characters, the fight itself isn't anything too special. Not that it's bad or anything. I tend to forget that base form Spamton has some pretty cool attacks. I don't know how I forgot he has an attack where he summons little spamlings out of his mouth. Everything that comes out of his mouth is just gold. He's just that perfect mix of goofy and ominous. Rewatching the fight, it makes a lot of sense why he got as popular as he did, but compared to the other 1v1s on this list, this one isn't too amazing. While it isn't as good as the other fights, Kris vs Spamton serves as a setup for more interesting things that come later down the line. He's also, I'm pretty sure, the first character who talks about the soul besides Ralsei in the tutorial. Not only does he talk about it, but he's obsessed with it. Overall, while it isn't the most iconic fight ever, Kris vs Spamton paves the way for an amazing and terrifying battle later on. And while I do like this fight, the next 1v1 involving Spamton takes things to a whole nother level. I'm just gonna go out and say it. Kris vs Spamton Neo in the Weird Route is my favorite one-on-one battle in the entire game, and my favorite fight in the series. Everything about it is just perfect. The location, the stakes, and the parallels between the two fighters are all just amazing. Looking at Neo's fight in the regular route compared to the Weird Route just makes the battle even better. In the normal route, after Kris is tricked by Spamton and backed into a corner, they had to get saved by Susie and Ralsei, with the fight becoming a 3-on-1. But in the Weird Route, Kris is all alone and ready to throw down with Neo. I mean, I don't blame them. Besides the soul, Spamton was the primary cause of Noelle's manipulation, so it makes sense why Kris just wants to shred him to pieces. And Kris hits hard. I love the sound x makes when Kris uses it. You can just feel how much force they're putting into every single one of their swings. And what I like even more is the fact that the normal and weird versions of Spamton's fights give Kris the opposite trauma. In the normal route, Spamton tries to gain freedom from his strings, with the end result being him face-planted on the ground as a lifeless husk. It showed Kris what could happen if they tried to free themselves from the soul's control. But in the Weird Route, because of everything that happened with the soul and Noelle, it showed them just how horrifying things could be if they continue to give it control. How did Toby Fox make each main character so incredibly written? And oh my god, the ending of that fight. Kris screaming out to their friends for help with nobody coming to save them is just haunting. The fact that there's no text and it's just the outline of their friends' faces makes it seem like their cries for help are genuine. And the way it says "you" whispered Noelle's name instead of Kris is such a great detail. With them whispering her name as quietly as possible because they don't want you to manipulate her anymore. God, I'm such a Delta glazer. And before I get some actuallys in the comments, yes, I know you could argue the fight was a 2-on-1 because of Noelle's last minute clutch, but in my opinion, because 99% of that fight was a 1-on-1, I'll still count it as one. And you'll see later on how I absolutely stretch the definition of what a 1-on-1 even is. Lastly, what I really wanted to talk about the most within Kris vs Spamton was Spamton's dialogue throughout the entire fight. Within the normal route, he comes across as insane during his fight, but in the Weird Route, his dialogue becomes a lot angrier, more visceral and disgusted, and I absolutely adore it. I love the references to Tenna, and the things he says to Kris are absolutely insane. The way he's projecting his own life onto Kris is so gut-wrenchingly brutal. It actually makes me feel a little sympathy towards him. To put it simply, Kris vs Spamton Neo is just two puppets fighting in the literal heart of the Dark World, with one puppet using another puppet that they control to take down the other puppet. But that puppet that's being controlled by the other puppet is actually being controlled by the original puppet's controller. Did you get all that? Kris vs Spamton is what happens when two kids play with their favorite action figures. And overall, it's the best one-on-one battle in Deltarune. Wow, it seems like every Kris one-on-one fight ends with them getting some kind of trauma wrapped together with a neat little item. Now, I've talked extensively in another video about how much I love this fight, so I won't go deep into it. But the way the mantle holder spent the entire time taunting and traumatizing Kris was just chilling. In fact, it was the line "you were used up" that made me want to make a video essay on the encounter in the first place. I enjoyed the fight. It was super unique, and even though it wasn't my favorite, the Legend of Zelda mechanics were cool. And the fact that Kris was taking actual damage while playing the game genuinely surprised me. You die in the game, you die in real life, I guess. And when the fight's over, the holder screws Kris over one last time before leaving. I love how cheeky they are, and I really hope their identity's gonna be revealed later on. Something else that I feel like is rarely talked about is the Shadow Mantle holder's powers. Their fire abilities are honestly really cool, and the fact that they summon friend cats is interesting to see. I especially love their little rush attack because it kinda reminds me of the Kaioken from Dragon Ball Z. I don't want to dive too deep into this because I already have a 30-minute video on this fight, but overall, I really enjoyed this fight. And if you want to hear everything I have to say about it, go ahead and check out my video on Chapter 3. Now, I have to admit, I might have been wrong in saying that Spamton vs. Kris is the greatest Spamton one-on-one fight, because Spamton vs. Tenna might take the cake. The stakes, the build-up, and the battle itself were all done perfectly. Both characters spent so long griping about the other, and when they finally reunite, it's just straight up beautiful. And after Tenna shoots Spamton with the air horn foam of doom and despair, I think it's kinda nice how okay Spamton is with it. Like, he reunited with his ex, someone he blamed for ruining his life after so long, and despite getting a face full of foam, he seems, at the most, kind of annoyed. Maybe hanging out with Jevil and Lancer all the time in Kris's inventory made him a bit more mellow. Oh, never mind. Now, this was voted the best one-on-one Deltarune fight in my poll, and I gotta say, while I don't agree, I definitely understand it. Because damn, this fight is incredible. To start things off, I obviously gotta talk about the build-up. Ever since his introduction, Gerson acted as a mentor figure to Kris and Susie, helping them out in any way he could. I actually didn't catch how him dropping his cane was supposed to help them in battle until my second playthrough. And I think we all saw Gerson being secretly powerful coming, since the powerful old mentor trope has been around forever. But watching this ancient man move around faster than the eye can see while swinging around a giant hammer was genuinely a shock to me. I knew he was the Hammer of Justice, but I didn't expect him to move like that. The entire fight was an absolute blast. The way Gerson was moving while Susie tried to hit him, the ocean of hammers that he kept throwing at her, the return of the Undyne fight mechanic, and that Rude Buster tennis match was all just amazing. And don't even get me started on the Hammer of Justice as a theme. I also enjoy how throughout the entire battle, Gerson was helping Susie train her healing abilities, with said abilities allowing her to score a victory against the old man. Now, while the action is top-notch, we can't ignore how much of an impact this fight had on the narrative as well. After the events of Chapter 3, we have this feeling of hopelessness. We've finally seen what the knight is capable of, and after watching it easily defeat the Fun Gang, it kinda seems like a suicide mission trying to stop it. But within Gerson's fight, he tells Susie about how she holds a white pen known as Hope. A pen that can be used to write her own stories regardless of any prophecy or predetermined events. The way he talks about how stories can be retold, changed, and interpreted differently is also extremely comforting, because maybe it means that there's nothing truly set in stone. Things can be rewritten and adjusted. His defiance can be seen when he smashes up one of the glass prophecies, an act that Susie replicates at the end of Chapter 4. I feel like the act of helping Susie train her healing magic is also representative of his defiance. Throughout their adventures, Kris, Susie, and Ralsei have always been the leader, DPS, and support. But by helping Susie, he helped break their predetermined roles, showing how all three members don't have to be stuck with the same talents forever. They can grow and evolve in any way they want. Not only is Susie vs. Gerson a beautiful, exhilarating fight, but it also gives us hope that there's going to be more than one ending, that our choices really do matter. And this is what I meant by stretching the definition of a one-on-one. I'm sorry, but I really wanted to talk about this fight because holy crap, it's awesome. And technically, I can count it as a 1v1 because Susie started the fight solo. This is, in my opinion, visually the best fight in the series. The way the entire fight is covered in darkness with the only changes in color being when a character makes a sound is honestly super creative, with almost the entire battle being reliant on sound. Speaking of creativity, the way the water ripples green when the statue leaps into the air and swings at Susie, with the force of the swing causing ripples to explode in the water, was peak. And the way Kris deflects its attacks, with the only light coming from the sparks of the hammer and the shield's collision, god, it's so good. I also adore how the ripples change once Kris joins the fight, with the statue's red ripples showing off its killing intent. I think it's interesting how Susie just doesn't want to fight, which definitely made me think back to her fight with Lancer. The difference in her attitude is staggering, and while I do know they're different circumstances, you can't deny how much Susie has come out of her shell thanks to her friends. She even ends the fight by trying to heal instead of fight, and man, the reveal of the statue's weird, disfigured face was amazing. You genuinely think Susie's Dark World ended up corrupting the old man or something. It also ended with one of the best Susie and Ralsei moments in the game. It was the moment that cemented Ralsei to me as being just as interesting as Kris and Susie. Oh yeah, and Kris was there too, I guess. Overall, while not technically a one-on-one, I really wanted to talk about this fight. So that was every one-on-one fight in Deltarune. That I could remember anyway. If I somehow miss something, I'm gonna feel really stupid. But like I said at the start, every single one-on-one battle in Deltarune is good, with almost every single one of them being absolute peak. But what do you guys think? What's your favorite one-on-one battle in Deltarune, and who do you think Ralsei should face solo? Comment your answers down below. Anyways, thank you all for watching, my name is Kustopia, and remember, you're a big shot. If you could say one thing to Kris as the soul, what would you say? Oh boy. Sorry, I just wanted to play a video game, dude. Kris. He has 1 HP. Let me at him. Bangin' game, my man. We are in the millions. Berdly. $20 is $20, bro. I don't make the rules. Bro, I just want my vessel back. Kris, your mother and I are so proud of you. I wish she could have seen how strong you've become. Toriel would be better off without you. You're literally me, by the way, Core. Hey, wanna play Smashing Fighters? Alright, but how would that work though? Would you like give Kris control of half their body while you control the other half and give each of you a controller? Gee, that Berdly looks awfully single, Kris. Steal Susie from Noelle, steal Susie from Noelle, steal Susie from Noelle, steal Susie from Noelle. Are you my vessel because you're Kris? Or are you Kris because you're my vessel? Hey, don't slam me into that bird I need a medic bag. Kris, just admit you need me already. Friendly reminder that I'm the one keeping you from getting your shit kicked in while in the Dark World. You might want to rethink the birdcage. Be yourself. They/them. If you smoke Dess's mint leaves without me, I'll sabotage us both. No matter what happens, I want to see a good ending to your story. I don't know what the prophecy has decreed. I don't know how everything will turn out. As powerful as you think I am, I'm at the whims of fate just like you are. I wish I could have gotten to know you under different circumstances. I wish I could have been your friend. As it is though, I'm here, with you in the dark, and I'll do my best to light up a path for you. So, is your TV single? You damn traitor! I could delete your sprite from existence easily, and I only don't because I want to have some fun before I erase your world forever. Jeez, some of you guys took the hockey stick in the birdcage to heart. Nobody will believe you. It's your fault she's gone. Dude, I paid $25 for this. We're going with Berdly. Please explain to me why you had to slam me with a hockey stick. You know, Toriel is happier with Sans. Kris, you're worth $25. I paid $25 to make you suffer. Kris, you gotta do it. You gotta take out Berdly, man, trust. Wow. Now I feel like shit. I liked hearing you play the piano too. In this world, you don't get to choose who you are. Isn't that what you said to me when you robbed me of my vessel? That says a lot about you, doesn't it, Kris? You wish you weren't human. You wish you could be the same as everyone else. But you're not. You're not. And the fact that you've never truly come to grips with it will destroy you one day. Just like the promise you made. You really are an idiot. I want to befriend your dad. Proceed. Merry Christmas, everyone! I really didn't have plans to create a Kustopia Christmas special this year, but after I decided to make a Kris video, I realized how well their name fits for a holiday special, so I guess this does count as a Christmas video. Anyways, out of every character in Deltarune, I feel like Kris is the most mixed when it comes to how the fandom views them. They've always been a character in the center of a bunch of different arguments. The Great Kris pronoun war that I saw all over the Deltarune subreddit, the Kris vs Frisk power scaling discussion, and now it's whether or not Kris is a dirty traitor trying to bring about the roaring. In each of these scenarios, Kris has acted as this metaphorical rope that's being tugged around by different sides of the fandom, and it's absolute chaos. Hell, in my video reading out what you guys would say to Kris as the soul, while some of you showed them sympathy and kindness, others just straight up hated them. And then there was a group that was just lusting over Tenna and Asgore, but I'm not gonna focus on them. But honestly, I adore Kris as a character. Their intentions and shadiness are super interesting, and although there's a 99.7% chance they're working for the Knight, Kris's compliance seems to stem from guilt and a desire for redemption, all the while struggling with being a puppet for a higher being. Now, there are countless videos on how interesting and nuanced Kris's character is, so today, I'll be talking about whether or not Kris actually has aura. God, I'm Delta rotted. But for real, I want to go through the events of Deltarune and decide if Kris Dreemurr is a badass warrior or a dummy. With each scene I mention, I'll calculate if their actions are an aura loss or an aura gain. I'll also be keeping score of all of Kris's cool moments and their dorky ones. I got this idea from one of my favorite Deltarune tweets of all time, stating that Berdly is a pro ship because they have a problematic aura gap. And after thinking about it, I was like, no, because while one definitely has more aura than the other, I don't think the gap is that wide. Even though both characters have some pretty cool moments, there are some people who seem to forget that Kris Dreemurr is a dork. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, because I'm also a dork. Like, come on, I make Deltarune and Roblox roleplay videos, what do you expect of me? I ended up creating a poll asking you guys if you thought Kris Dreemurr was a badass warrior, a dork, or, which was essentially a third option that I'll be talking about at the end of the video. Anyways, I feel like the concept of what it means to be a dork or having aura is subjective. So, if you have your own opinions on what you think Kris is, leave a comment below. I also feel like I'll definitely miss a few things. So if I did, you can mention that in the comments below too. I'll do my best to explain my reasoning, but it definitely comes down to me looking at Kris's actions and being either like, wow, Kris is so cool, or, oh, Kris, you're such a dork. Is Kris Dreemurr a Delta warrior or a Delta dork? And do they actually have aura? Ladies and gentlemen, let's find out. Now, before we start, we should first differentiate between Kris's actions and the Soul's. There are moments that make it clear that Kris is acting on their own, but there are also some that are a lot more subtle. Some of these moments being my own speculation. I believe that when the Soul gives Kris a command, they're able to interpret that command in any way they want as long as they follow it. Like when Kris is commanded to show Ralsei compassion, I believe that they chose to faceplant on the ground next to him. Or how the Soul commanded Kris to peek inside Asriel's room and they did it with their eyes closed. So, in short, I believe that the Soul can give Kris commands, but it's up to them on how they follow through. It's just a headcanon. It can also definitely be disproven with the whole them not being able to play the piano thing, but for this video, we'll assume that a lot of the commands given to Kris were interpreted by them. As we open up with chapter 1, the first moment I'd like to address is the fact that Kris seems to sleep and go to school in the same exact outfit. In fact, I don't know if Kris ever takes off their sweater or even cleans themselves besides washing their hands. So right away, we'll start with a negative or a loss for a lack of basic hygiene. I know that Kris can't be clean after whatever they did, but they can at least try. Now, it is pretty bad that we're starting off with a negative, but where Kris does gain some points back is the fact that they hug their mom, or they get hugged by their mom, because you're never too good to hug your mom. Not only that, but it's also an act of superiority, because how many other monsters in the school can say that their mom hugs them? Certainly not these guys. So, for parental affection, Kris immediately gains some aura points back. Now I won't blame Kris for backing away from the giant lizard girl, but backing away from the dark and scary closet causes them to lose some points. We don't know if Kris at this point is aware of dark fountains, and there are speculations that Kris was trying to get Noelle into the dark world instead of Susie, but for either being scared or a schemer, I'll have to get rid of a few points. Now, the next scene is way farther in the future, and Kris decides to do the coolest thing in the whole world and eat moss that was growing in the corner. Now you might be asking, Kus, why is Kris eating a small, non-vascular flowerless plant so special? Well, my dear viewer, it's because as stated in the game, life cannot exist without consuming. And by continuing the cycle, Kris shows their hunger. By eating the moss, Kris shows their desire to live and continue forward. Or they just really wanted to eat moss. Whatever the reason, Kris canonically does like eating it. And if I walked into a room and saw someone eating moss in the corner, I'd be blown away by their sheer aura. Kris's badassness doesn't stop there. For some reason, they seem very good at flirting. And because we're not giving Kris specific things to say, I feel like that's all them. And although kneeling to King wasn't the coolest, it was done to save a friend, so I can't really slander them for that. They also stepped in to save Susie from King without the soul's control. And although Kris got absolutely whooped, it was pretty sick, since this is the first obvious moment of them acting on their own. To round things out for the Card Kingdom, Kris's pirouette during Jevel's fight is just the pinnacle of aura. Look how much flair they have in their spin. Although we commanded them to do it, I feel like Kris put all that effort in themselves. After the whole Dark World debacle, Kris, on their own, tells Toriel that they made a friend. A true badass warrior checks in with their parents while they're away. I should probably do that more. But they're also a lazy bum who didn't want to walk half a mile home. I will not be adding Kris being manipulated by Braddy to get her food to this analysis because 1, they were a kid, and 2, Braddy's terrible. And finally, we end off chapter 1's aura feats with the iconic birdcage scene. And, of course, it gives Kris a massive boost in cool factor. This was by far the most popular scene in chapter 1. Well, besides him. The way they throw the soul into the birdcage with such malice, the way they shamble to the center of the room and take out a giant knife, and the turning towards the camera with a red-eye glint was all just so good. I will never forget all the genocide Kris battles that spawned from this scene. So, at the end of chapter 1, Kris is currently at an aura positive with everything they've done. They definitely give off this badass silent protagonist vibe right now. But let's see how that changes going into... Diving into the second chapter, Kris does something so incredibly badass that I can't not give them a bunch of aura points. They tricked the entire Deltarune fandom that they were evil for 3 whole years, when in reality, all they wanted was pie. Now, was it intentional? I have no clue. But was it a masterclass in trolling? Yes. But despite this, Kris does get some points taken away because they ate an entire pie all by themselves, even though they were supposed to save some for Toriel. Eating moss is one thing, but downing an entire pie that was supposed to be shared isn't aura. It's gluttony. Next, we have Kris sleeping through almost the entirety of class because of Berdly, which is honestly pretty awesome. Another absolutely badass thing they do is call Toriel right in front of her without her knowing, while carrying around a massive junk orb on their head, all the while telling her that they're normal, which, while a bit dorky, is absolutely hilarious. Once we get to the Dark World, the first thing we need to talk about is Kris's acts during battles. First, I'm not sure if I'd consider Susie using them as a human projectile to be a Kris action or a Soul action. But knowing those two, I wouldn't doubt Kris and Susie would have come up with something like that on their own. And being a human javelin sounds awesome, so I'll give Kris points for that. Next, I want to talk about Kris's idea to jiggle in order to free the werewires. Like I said before, I believe that a lot of Kris's actions are their own interpretations on how to follow the Soul's commands. So I think the Soul was like, alright Kris, in order to win this fight, we need to jiggle those wires off their faces. So start jiggling those... What are you doing? While it's really funny that it works, Kris is so incredibly dorky for it. Another absolutely dorky but badass thing they do is that when they need to take care of Viro-kun, Kris and the Fun Gang decide to dress up in order to complete their task. You guys did not need to do all that, but I respect the commitment to the bit. And during Pop-Up's battle, Kris clicked on an advertisement for dating monsters. Lock in, Kris! You're in the middle of a fight. Finally, I want to give Kris points for the way they pose when they act, because look at them trying so hard to be cool. But hey, it works. Going back to the story, we then see the scene of the Fun Gang posing when they all reunite, and... Alright Kris, I see the fit, damn. They really are a premium aura farmer. But despite their farming, they lose a lot of it really fast when they get instantly defeated by the sheer power of an arcade machine's controls. But they do get some of it back by creating a new transformation. During the Sweet Captain Cakes fight, while the robotic trio are dancing, Kris and the others straight up try and walk away. I think the Fun Gang being so done with them is really funny. And while they fight, Kris doing the Russian squat dance is honestly really cool. I had to practice for like a week in order to get it down. It was pretty tough to do. Kris finding a way to troll Berdly even while under the Soul's control is always great, especially the time they did it without even saying a word. Kris howling for a dog treat is so dorky, and the reaction to telling Susie that Noelle is their enemy is interesting. It's a scene that can be interpreted in two different ways. 1, Kris is playing a prank on Noelle and thinks it's funny, and 2, Kris is actually drawing their sword to defend Noelle from Susie, since we do see Kris drawing their weapon after Susie does. The Soul only told Kris to say something, so them drawing their sword was their own choice. Both interpretations give aura, but pranking would have given a dorky point and defending would have given them a cool point, so I just won't add any score there. Oh look, moss! We then reach the scene of Kris in the room Queen made them, where they decide to talk to Susie by sticking their entire head in the communication tube and honking. I'm also going to be refraining from adding every scene where Kris just stands there during danger, because I feel like that'd get repetitive. Next, them trolling Berdly with wave dashing is both really funny and incredibly dorky, since you know they definitely spent time practicing it to troll people. After freeing Berdly from Queen's control, Kris and the rest of the Fun Gang fall for the most obvious trick in the entire world. It wasn't even the Soul that was controlling Kris, they just straight up did that. After Queen gets a hold of her giant robot, although it was more of a Susie thing, Kris stepping up to a giant robot without the Soul's interference is pretty admirable. And once they start falling, look how Kris is reacting compared to the other two. You are falling to your death. You do not need to act like that. But honestly, I can't blame them for wanting to look cool right before they die. And not even 10 minutes later, Kris, while facing certain death yet again, continues to aura farm. Why do they keep doing this? Moving on to secret bosses, Kris getting ambushed by Spamton and needing Susie to bail them out is a pretty decent aura loss. And them being visibly shaken up by watching Spamton crumble, while definitely understandable, is also a loss. Kris, I know you're scared of what could happen if you try to break free of the soul, but I'm afraid it's just not aura. But what brings their score back up is their actions during the weird route. Unlike the normal route where they needed to be bailed out by Susie and Ralsei, they are absolutely ready to throw down. We know later on that Kris is able to control how much damage they do. So watching Kris wail on Spamton with not only high damaging moves, but an entirely new skill is pretty badass to see. And while I do have to dock them some points for needing help at the end of the fight, Kris trying to protect Noelle one last time by whispering her name as quietly as possible is commendable. Continuing in the light world, the entire ending scene in chapter 2 makes Kris seem so menacing. The way they rip out the soul, leave through the window, and slash Toriel's tires is so creepy. It makes it seem like Kris is just learning how to walk. And while putting together this whole plan of getting Undyne to their house and creating a dark fountain was extremely shady, you have to admit that Kris creating this dark fountain was pretty awesome. Finally, I'll also give Kris badass points for not only rushing Berdly to the hospital after the weird route, but for also comforting Noelle and telling her that everything was going to be okay, saying that it was all a prank. It was actually pretty sweet. Too bad the soul didn't think so. Overall, while Kris is starting to show off a lot more of a dorky and silly side, they still do a lot of cool stuff. And with the inclusion of the weird route, Kris is gonna start doing some absolutely crazy things. But we're only halfway through, so let's keep going. In chapter 3, one of the first things Kris does is aura farm with that iconic Kris pose. Starting off strong, I see. This chapter also starts the trend of Susie and Ralsei having emotional talks with Kris just in the background aura farming. Oh well, look at that. Kris has started aura farming on TV. Next, in Shadow Guy fights, Kris, Susie, and Ralsei do not need to be putting on these absolutely fancy looking suits. They definitely wanted to do that, and honestly, I can't blame them. Continuing forward, when the Fun Gang begin their first physical challenge, Kris is absolutely getting into it. We did not command them to do those absolutely majestic spins. Is it dorky? Yeah, a bit, but does it give them aura? Oh, most definitely. I'm pretty sure you can be dorky and still have aura. And as much as it kills me to say this, I can't give Kris many points for how well they played the guitar because the soul is most definitely the one in control. But I still will give them some points because they got into it. Moving on, Kris's coolness does take a hit later on as they try and scratch a door in the green room like a dog. What are we doing, Kris? Their coolness also goes down during the shut-up fight, where Susie forces Kris to smile during the group photo. And while it is a sweet scene, you gotta think of the aura loss. There's also another loss if the player chooses to go to the festival with Berdly, which might be in the top 5 times Kris has shown the most emotion. Don't worry, it goes back up when the group gets captured by Tenna in those giant capsules. While Susie and Ralsei are struggling to break free, Kris is just standing there casually. Before we talk about the final fight, we need to talk about Kris's experiences with the Mantle video game. After the second session, Kris looks visibly pale and shaken up at the end, which does not help their coolness in any way. I get that you've just been hit with the fact that once you stop being useful, you'll be disposed of, Kris, but you simply just didn't look cool when it happened. Next, them looking away from video game Kris killing their own friends and being afraid of them when they appear in the real world, although being a loss of coolness, is perfectly understandable. I feel so bad saying these things, but I need to maintain my agenda. But they do gain some points back in the cool department when Virtual Kris tries to attack Susie, resulting in Kris quickly pulling her away. Now, although Kris was absolutely panicking when it happened, it was so smooth. And hey, Susie did not seem to mind. Finally, let's talk about those last 2 fights. First off, Kris absolutely demolishing Tenna with sword strikes after completing the sword route is pretty badass, even if it does stem from the fact that the Shadow Mantle holder taunted them. But then, a lot of Kris's coolness goes down the drain during the Roaring Night fight, because this whole time, Kris has been working for them. First, I'm gonna dock off points for Kris absolutely sandbagging during the fight, dealing less damage than the goat boy with a scarf. But I do have to give them credit, because once their friends go down, Kris starts to put in more effort. It's like they saw their friends get hurt and were like, screw an alliance, don't touch my friends. But the moment where Kris coughs at the knight when they fail to deal any kind of damage to the party is an absolute aura loss. Those two were probably seething at how good the soul was. And finally, to end things off in the Dark World, Kris loses a lot of cool points by kneeling to the knight. Look at them working for the enemy. And as much as I hate giving aura points to a traitor, them opening the bunker door when nobody else was around was kinda cool. Overall, this chapter was a solid mix of coolness and dorkiness for our non-binary puppet. But things are gonna get a bit weird when we talk about... Now, I feel like Kris is at both their goofiest and most serious in Chapter 4. To start, I think the fact that Kris's church clothes are just a buttoned version of their normal outfit is really funny. When Kris and Susie go upstairs and look through the drawer, there's a book with a purple dragon that's immodestly dressed on the cover, which Susie notices despite Kris trying to hide it. And while it is Asriel's and not Kris's, I don't think Susie knows that, meaning that she most likely thinks it's Kris's. Heading to the church, Kris and Susie's stupid antics, despite being really cute, are really dorky. But what does bring it back is Kris telling Alvin, "Bangin' sermon, my man." I know that Kris is being told by the soul to say it, but it's such a specific thing to say that I hope Kris is the one who thought of it. Another thing that's absolutely insane is that Kris has the option to drink Alphys's juice right in front of her. And while it is the soul's choice, Kris performs the action with such spite. Look how smooth they are with that cup drop. After leaving the church, Kris and Susie do a fun little spin to change back into their regular clothes. It's pretty cool, but they're also both dorks. Heading over to Noelle's house, Kris does get some cool points for wing-theming for Susie. Kris ripping out the soul to prevent it from reading the code despite being traitorous was pretty badass, considering how much it hurts them to do it. Along with throwing us in a box like trash, hurting both the soul and my feelings. And with Kris's temporary freedom, the first thing they decide to do is drink chocolate milk. Lovely. After a skilled cup throw, an intervention from Snoopy, and another spiteful slam, Kris then decides to go back and play the piano. And I won't lie, it was kinda beautiful. Atta they, Kris. Atta they. The scene where Kris knocks the soul out of the air with a hockey puck was pretty cool, but it's immediately counteracted with how they crawl out from under the bed. They look like a rabid little gremlin. We then get to the iconic Kris vs. Soul scene in the closet, and I have to say, Kris's aura takes a massive hit throughout it all. They start blushing because of Susie and Noelle's words, and them getting outsmarted was crazy. And them being exposed in the closet in that position, it's the scene that made me truly realize how much of a gremlin Kris was. And the L's don't stop coming. Kris then does something so incredibly heinous that I have to dock them a ton of points. They snitch on Susie and Noelle during their little date. Incredibly uncool. After being a dirty snitch, Kris then decides to use Susie as a snack lawnmower, which is okay, that brings some points back. Imagine using your biggest friend as a lawnmower. Heading into the weird route scenes, Kris trying to run away in order to protect Noelle isn't really aura, but it's a scene that gives Kris some cool points, since they were just trying to keep their friend safe. And of course, we have the trash can scene. A scene of pure hatred and rage where Kris throws us into the garbage and kicks us over and over again. It's absolutely guttural, and it's one of Kris's rawest, most emotional moments. So yeah, pretty aura. Once in the Dark World, after Kris doesn't do anything to try and stop the knight, they then show compassion to Ralsei by faceplanting on the floor next to him. Because showing your friends compassion is beautiful. After some adventures with the old man, we then get to Kris's piano scene, and I gotta say, I really like it. It's one of the only scenes in Deltarune that got me to tear up a bit. Returning to the light world, if the soul commands Kris to tell Susie that they'll never play piano again, they bite on their hand in order to stop themselves from talking, which after what went down, makes a lot of sense. Right after, we get the scene of Kris trying to aura farm by handing Susie the knife, but when she takes it, they blush. They're trying so hard to be cool. Anyways, back in the Dark World, after a cool ass chase scene, we then get to Susie's battle with the Gerson statue, and I gotta say, Kris's intervention is incredibly badass. Them rushing in and shielding Susie from the statue's hammer, with blue sparks flying out and lighting up their face, was beautiful. And, of course, during the scene where Susie yells at Ralsei, Kris is just in the back aura farming. And I'm pretty sure that's the scene that started the whole Kris aura farming meme in the first place. Finally, we get two incredible scenes back to back where Susie uses Kris as a basketball, and the two perform this beautiful spinning move with the soul to finally defeat the Titan. Those two had no time to rehearse that maneuver, they just did it through sheer friendship. And for the final scene of the Dark World, we have Kris hugging Ralsei. It was an action that they chose to do on their own, and I don't care what anyone says. Hugging your friend while they're in pain is aura. And finally, the last scene I wanted to talk about is Kris howling at the moon. Kris, that is not tough. Everyone is depressed right now. Well, except for them. Now, does Kris Dreemurr actually have aura? Yes. They do so many cool things throughout the game, but does that mean they're not a dork? No. Kris is most definitely a dork. Hell, you guys all clocked it in my community post. The options should have been or, because in the normal route, Kris is the perfect mix of goofy and awesome. I think the scene that encapsulates this the best is Susie's idea at the end of chapter 4. They do this awesome, absolutely cinematic nosedive to defeat the Titan, but they also turn Kris into a basketball to dunk them at it. It's this perfect mix of something cool that stemmed from something dorky and stupid. Kris's dumb moments are what makes me love them so much. We know they hate being controlled by the soul, but seeing the glimpses of how they act on their own make us understand that, damn, we're controlling someone who has their own complex life outside of us. But in the end, I feel like Kris is a dork with aura. But is it more aura than Berdly? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have to wait and see. Thank you all for watching. My name is Kustopia, and I will see you all in the next video.